across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very, very good morning to you. Welcome to the show. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Very, very much appreciate you joining me. Lots to talk about today on Talk, the home of common sense. And whether you're listening on DA+ radio or on your smart speaker, whether you're watching on YouTube or on your connected device, thank you very much indeed for your company. Lots, as I say, to talk about today. I bet you can't guess what the main topic is. Yes, of course you can. It is, of course, Shabana Mahmood, the Home Secretary, and her announcements on how she, after all this time, is going to be the one to tackle illegal immigration, stop the boats. I have to say, on the face of it, it sounds quite tough talking. We should be able to get any of it through the Labour MPs, the human rights lawyers, the Attorney General of this government, Lord Hermo, indeed our own Prime Minister, human rights lawyer extraordinaire Keir Starmer. That is the big question. But also, given that a lot of these measures are basically copying the Danish policy, actually the Danish policy hasn't been as successful as many are claiming it is. So we'll talk about all of that. Don't forget, if you miss anything of the show, you can go to my YouTube page. We've conveniently called it the Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. If you hit subscribe, you never have to miss a thing. So let's talk more specifically about what Shabana Mahmood is announcing. About 2:30 today, she's going to be speaking in the House of Commons. She's going to announce that countries that refuse to take back illegal migrants from Britain will face visa bans. If they don't accept the deportation of failed asylum seekers or foreign criminals, they're to face a sliding scale of penalties, from the removal of fast-track visa services to bans on entry for everyone from tourists up to senior politicians. In particular, looking at 3 African countries to start with: Angola, Namibia and the Democratic Republic of Congo. Some 4,000 people are waiting for deportation to those countries in total, but have not been allowed. These are called Trump-style bans, but they could extend to other countries: Somalia, Bangladesh, Iran, Egypt, many others. Pakistan is actually one of the worst offenders. Now, as part of that crackdown, reports also say that illegal migrants' jewellery and watches and other values could be seized and sold to help pay towards accommodation costs. This is official policy in Denmark, but rarely happens, and was actually denied by a Home Office minister this morning. So they're already backtracking on the stuff that they've briefed out to journalists. Meanwhile, hundreds of residents protested against plans to house 600 male asylum seekers, young migrant men, of fighting age, usual suspects, at the Crowborough training camp in East Sussex. I mean, hundreds of residents, from old to young, kids, loads of mums. I mean, you know what? They don't want to have these people housed there. The solution from moving people from hotels to camps, no. If they're allowed to wander freely, that is not going to be acceptable to people. Plus, we're going to talk about the budget. Small matter, that's coming up next week. And working families will be more than £1,000 worse off as a result of the looming stealth tax raid, according to the Tories. The Chancellor's plan to freeze income tax thresholds, which, by the way, the Tories had already done and Labour have carried on with, but she wants to freeze them for a further 2 years, all the way to 2030. It's going to cost higher-earning couples as much as £1,300 in tax and national insurance. It's also reported that she's going to impose a milkshake tax, ending the exemption that dairy drinks have from the tax on sugary drinks. But why are we taxing sugary drinks in the first place? You may well ask. All that coming up, plenty more besides, lots of top guests, including among them, always delighted to welcome on a Monday morning, commentator Sam Armstrong. Morning.
Good morning.
Now, you have said regularly there is something we often come into on a Monday morning. And what's happened on a Monday morning?
The Home Office have been in touch. The fax machines here at Talk TV Towers have been whirring, and we have just the latest.
You probably do have fax machines somewhere.
Of a litany of announcements to emerge from that department, promising this week, I promise you, this week, we have finally solved illegal migration. Spoiler alert for everyone listening at home, they haven't. It sounds tough, they always do, and yet, mysteriously, magically, the boats still keep coming, and the gangs, well, they remain unsmashed.
Well, they do, and they no doubt will continue to do so. I'm wondering whether our audience thinks this is going to work, because a lot of this will sound quite tough talking. Shabana Mahmood, she's got the credentials, and as we know with Labour, because they think about everything in terms of skin colour, that's literally, identity politics is their thing, is that a child of herself Pakistani migrants born in this country who has done well in politics, a woman, she can make these announcements. But if it was a white, let's face it, if it was a white man, they would think that would look wrong. So Nigel Farage says exactly the same thing. It's racist, as Richard Tyson's been saying on JK's show. But she can make the announcement. The interesting thing is, of course, when we've had Home Secretaries who also happen to have been ladies who have an immigrant or ethnic minority background, whether it's Suella Braverman or Priti Patel, and they've announced anything tough talking, they've always been accused by the left of being these awful, completely blatantly racist, sort of Uncle Toms and the like, and it is extraordinary. But look, I like the sound of a lot of this. I think this is pretty bare bones, basic stuff. Do I think they're going to do any of it? Probably not. Do I think even if they did do any of it, it would actually apply to many people? Probably not. And will it actually act as a deterrent on that basis? Probably not. But I'd love to know your thoughts. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. Text us on 87222. Get in touch with us on X at Talk TV. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text costs £1. Standard network rate message. Seems to me the idea that you would say, look, no one else can come into your country because if you're not going to accept your wrong uns back, we're not going to let any more of you come in. That seems to me to be the most basic international diplomacy going. That's a tick, yes, right?
Yeah, but I think you're right to point out how they reacted when other people called for this. This was a proposal from Robert Jenrick a year ago during the Conservative leadership campaign, as has been reported today. And it was decried at the time. A year on in, when nothing has seemed to work, they're now looking at it. But it's a really incremental step, right? It's a kind of, if you're a country that takes absolutely no migrants that you're back from us, then we're going to step you up the ladder over the course of 5-10 years, perhaps. So many methods. And by the way, Namibia, Angola and Democratic Republic of Congo. These are not the illegal migrant capitals of the world.
But they've got 4,000 nationals who we don't want.
Yeah, but Julia,
I know, it's nothing.
That's less than 10%
it's a good
of what
start.
we get in a
Exactly.
year.
And they're looking at extending to Somalia, Bangladesh, Iran, and Egypt.
Not Pakistan, though.
No, Pakistan. But again, Pakistan would be. Again, in terms of the numbers, absolutely. And again, could you take all your grooming gang rapists back as well? It is absolutely extraordinary. And again, this should be done. If you're going to do a Trump-style visa ban, well, do it Trump-style.
Yeah.
Say, right, as of Monday, none of your nationals, I don't care if they're billionaires, I don't care if they're coming to visit their dying mum, they ain't coming in. Full stop, not coming in. Sort it out until the first plane load of your wrong-uns, you don't get a single person. The idea that we desperately need trade with Angola and Democratic Republic of Congo, do one, please. Look, so again, they announce it, it's not actually going to be any meaningful thing. What do you think about there was a report in The Sun, and this is something that Denmark has officially got in law. Small boat migrants could have their jewellery, their watches, other assets seized to pay for accommodation. If you've got assets, why are we paying for you to live in a hotel? People, of course, on Radio 4 immediately, what, you're going to take someone's family heirlooms? Home Office Minister immediately says no. Now, presumably, these people aren't going to go, well, I've come here, here's my big bin bag full of money. This stuff's going to be hidden. Who are we kidding? Yeah, they're not going to do it. That's not going to happen.
They're perfectly capable of throwing their passports and their birth certificates out of the boat on the way there. I'm sure they're more than capable of hiding this.
Probably able to do that.
It's all going to have to go through some legal due process. The normal asylum industry is going to get to work, and it's never ever going to happen.
But then there is the thing in this country, you can't get benefits if you've got unemployed, even though you've paid it. You've paid into the system the whole time. If you've got assets of more than whatever it is, 12,000, 20,000, something. I can't remember what the sum is. I'm hoping I'm not in that position.
Yeah.
But people have done the right thing and saved.
Yeah, but Julia,
and then you can't claim benefits.
These are criminals. They are breaking into the country. They are paying organised criminals to smuggle them here. They're working with some of the most dangerous gangs around the world. The only one thing that every single person who comes on a boat to this country has in common, they're not of the same race, they're not of the same religion, not the same background. They've got one thing in common. They're criminals. They broke into our country and stole somebody else's place.
It's absolutely. Well, I don't want this. I'm with the caller, actually, was just played out on JK's show. He's like, I'm done. I'm pretty much close the doors. I don't care if you come from a terrible country. On that basis, every woman and girl in Afghanistan has a right to asylum in this country if they could get here. That's not feasible, is it? I mean, you need to change the system in Afghanistan. But the lefties don't want us to do that either. Oh, don't get involved in foreign wars. I mean, which way do you want it? Are we just going to take everybody? I think an awful lot of these young men should stay and try and improve their own countries and actually make them better so they can stay. I'm at the point where unless someone is being specifically like, you're standing as an opposition leader against Putin and then you're going to be threatened with death. Yeah, we'll take you, because there's a specific reason, for why you're being targeted. If you just come from a basket case, economically, civil war, country, not my problem. I'm really sorry. You've used up all the goodwill. It's gone now. There are too many of you. We're done. You're going to have to go and move to a local country nearby, as most people do, which shows you that they can go to nearby countries. And I'm with that caller. It's like Sarah. I'm done. I don't care anymore. I'm done.
By the way, that's how the asylum system used to work.
Yeah.
But the story that makes me most sick today is this Crowborough migrant camp.
Yeah.
500 fighting age...
600.
Forgive me, 600 fighting age men.
What's 100? What's 100 illegal migrants between friends, Sam?
But here's what really, really, really cheeses me off. This was a military camp. Once upon a time, that camp was for military fighting age men from this country
defending us.
Volunteered to defend these shores. Today, it is being given over, handed over to fighting age men who have invaded this country. And I don't apologise for using the word invaded. They are coming over en masse, breaking the laws in the thousands, organised gangs, organised criminals. Some of them have gone on to become terrorists. Yeah. Many of them go straight on to watch lists. We have seen the most appalling sexual violence cases. We've seen appalling theft, appalling illegal work. Absolutely everything about this scandal represents an invasion. And today, rather than defend our borders, we are turning over precious military bases to house the very people who have invaded this country, and we're doing it all at our expense. Yeah,
it's absolutely obscene. And again, I think some of us go, OK, if on a temporary basis while these things are assessed, and it doesn't take a year, a couple of weeks, a month at best, they're going to be held, but behind bars, unable to be walking freely, then I think some of us would accept it. But, we know perfectly well the reason why they're all free on the streets is because they couldn't hold them in detention centres because of human rights laws. Now, there's a plan also to go through fast-track deportation, so limiting the number of appeals. Again, that'll be challenged on the European Court of Human Rights. Permanence, this was announced over the weekend. Permanent settlement only granted after 20 years, not 5. Your refugee status is only temporary, basically reviewed every 2.5 years. And then, of course, you had the bleeding hearters out going, oh, but then people can't make a life for themselves, and it's like, well, yeah, I mean, but that's the whole point. But you're only here, and I genuinely heard a BBC interviewer say today, so you're basically saying they can't make a life here for themselves because at any point they could be sent home. And you think, there's a key word there, isn't it? Home. Yeah, to their home. So if they've left their home because it was not safe, but now their home is safe, then you go home. That's like someone coming to stay with you because their home has been flooded and they move into your home and they're staying with you, and then their home is mended and they go, well, actually, quite like it here. I think I'll stay here. No, your home's fine. You can go back to it now.
Yeah, and by the way, we didn't invite them. They snuck in through the back window and they moved themselves into the kitchen all by themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. Also, judges are going to be told not to use the Article 8 of the European Court of Human Rights, the right to a family life, which allows basic migrants to dodge deportation. But I'm not entirely sure how they're able to do that. I'm going to read... No, I'm going to let you have your say. I'm going to read this out. I do this fairly regularly on the show now because I do think people need to know. Human Rights Act, the Article 8, the right to privacy. It's right to privacy in a family life. This is what it says. There are 2 paragraphs. Number 1, everyone has the right to respect for his private and family life, his home and his correspondence. What's not to like about that? That somehow is being used. So basically, I've come here illegally, I've committed crimes, and then there was a case even noted in the papers yesterday. I've basically knocked some bird up. She's carrying my baby, so now I've got a right to a family life with her. So you can't deport me. I mean, and judges are going, yes, absolutely. Well, you know what? She can move and live with you in your godforsaken basket case country because you're not, and neither is your child. My problem. But everyone has the right to respect for his private and family life. Yeah. But, I mean, you don't necessarily get to have it anywhere you want, and his home is correspondence. That's about protecting us from governments interfering in us as we go about as lawful citizens. What every judge now appears to ignore is the second paragraph. It's not an appendices. It's part of the actual Article 8, right? And this is what it says. There shall be no interference by a public authority with the exercise of this right, except such as is in accordance with the law. Oh, so when you've broken the law, you don't get to have those rights. We can put you in prison. You don't have a right to family life, you're in prison. And is necessary in a democratic society in the interests of national security. Oh, I'm thinking tens of thousands of fighting age men arriving here might be an issue of national security. Public safety. Oh, I think migrants coming here raping our girls and our women might be an issue of public safety. Or the economic well-being of the country. The fact that most of these people will never get a job, never be contributors and are a drain on society. And for the prevention of disorder or crime, well, yeah, we've seen a huge amount of migrant crime, particularly by illegal migrants, for the protection of health or morals, and for the protection of the rights and freedoms of others. So you're right, I would say, do not have to pay taxes to fund someone from Eritrea to live the life of Riley in a hotel for the next 2 years and be here. You're right to allow your kid to walk to school and not get sexually assaulted. I mean, on what planet is Article 8, the right to privacy, if you read the full thing, being allowed to prevent migrants who've entered into the country illegally, or some who've committed crimes here, convicted of crimes here, from being deported, unless those judges are not judges. They are left-wing, frankly, lunatic activists who need to be not advised and they need to be sacked on the spot.
Well, but Julia, that would all work if there wasn't a supranational, superior court sat in Strasbourg, made up of the citizens of 27 or more different countries that all get to determine what the law is for our country. And they've, by the way, gone further than you've had a kid. They've said in the past that you've got a cat, so we can't deport you because your family life extends to your feline friends.
What about plants? Could you have a plant?
Well, King Charles talks through his plants, of course. So maybe indeed. But here's the thing: Shabana Mahmood can say as much as she likes, and we're going to tell judges not to apply it. She can't because
judges get to do what they want.
We are stuck in the European Court of Human Rights. For as long as we're stuck in that body, the laws of this land will continue to be set, not in Westminster where we can fire politicians for getting it wrong, but in Strasbourg, overseen by judges that I've never heard of, you've never heard of.
Some of them actually have never been judges in their own national courts. They're not actually.
Oh, they're pretty low rent. Yeah, some of them. But this is the problem. And if you can't sack people, if you're not accountable to people, this is when they go off on these mad journeys into fantasy lands. And this is why 15 years after that cat case, we're still stuck with hundreds of thousands of foreign-born criminals in our country that we cannot deport.
Yeah, absolutely. It is utter madness. There are some other stories. I'm just throwing that out there. We've got a budget omnishambles coming up. The latest... talk about stealth taxes. Basically, if the threshold at which you start paying higher rate tax or top rate tax keeps going up, there's an awful lot of people who are saying, I'm a top rate tax payer, people are saying, and I don't feel well off. I don't feel rich because so much of my money is taken in tax. There's talk about this mansion tax, and again, £2 million. That's a flat in some parts of London, but a lot of people say, not my problem, I'm not going to be paying it. But an awful lot of people on really quite normal incomes are going to be ending up paying 40% rate of tax and a 20% rate of tax on that extra income. So you work hard, you get a pay rise, you strive, you do all the right thing, you do those extra hours, to get on the, the career ladder, and then you're going to be hit with 40% tax on any of those extra earnings. If you want to disincentivise people, well, way ahead for that. But we've also got ongoing leadership issues. All the fuss over West Streeting last week, absolute omnishambles there. Now Angela Rayner apparently plotting again behind the scenes, but she's so busy plotting she hasn't got time to do that admin. Still hasn't paid that stamp duty. It's just extraordinary.
Phase 2, do you remember that? We're in phase 2 of this Labour government. It's almost as good as phase 1.
It's just just finally also the Epstein files. Donald Trump has basically said, fine Republicans in Congress, vote to release the Epstein files. I don't care. There's going to be a vote in Congress tomorrow, but of course has to go to the Senate as well. Do you think there is going to be anything in there that he does need to worry about? Because a lot of people, he did promise he would release them, and it's one of those things. It's like people in British governments often say they're going to release things, and you then realise there's obviously stuff that security services or someone doesn't want released, and so it never happens.
Well, so far actually the contents of the Epstein files that have come out that pertain to Donald Trump show that Donald Trump seems to be the one member of American elite that Jeffrey Epstein didn't like and felt was a bit of a scary presence in his life. And, you know, I'll always say this about Donald Trump. He's a man actually of many flaws, but his personal morals have been all right in some ways.
Are you kidding me?
In some ways.
Are you kidding me?
In some ways. This is a man who doesn't drink. That seems to spend all of his time on the golf course. He's said some daft things, don't get me wrong.
No, he's behaved in a very... I'm sorry, there have been numerous allegations of sexual impropriety, some very serious indeed. And you know, I mean, I'm sorry. I'm really sorry.
I'm not with you on this one.
Well, you cannot be with me on this one, but there's an awful lot of documents in black and white that are with me on this one. Just finally, I'm totally with him when it comes to the BBC, though. There was supposed to be this phone call. We don't know yet whether it's happened or not between Keir Starmer and Donald Trump last night. And lots of people calling on Keir Starmer to basically use your big matey thing with Donald Trump to get him to drop this idea of like a lawsuit of up to $5 billion. And we've got so many people saying, it's outrageous. This isn't the Trump Broadcasting Corporation. This is outrageous. But it's like, no. If you actually do something twice, Newsnight and Panorama, completely and utterly distorting somebody's message with that January the 6th speech, you deserve whatever happens to you. My only issue is I don't want, as a taxpayer, licence fee payer, to have to pay money to Donald Trump. I want it to come out the pensions of the people who did it.
Well, but here's what I also don't want. I don't want my Prime Minister to be taking the limited numbers of favours that you get from a businessman, a politician like Donald Trump, in order to bail out a bunch of biased BBC know-nothing lecturers of us who are always happy to pour scorn on our journalism. And by the way, if we were to get sued by a foreign leader, I very much doubt that the BBC would be calling for the government of our country to come bailing us out. The BBC is meant to work for us, don't forget it. We pay our licence fee. They're meant to do their job, which is to report the news without bias, which
they're legally required by. I'm still getting people messaging going, oh, well, you're biased on your show. It's like, no, I'm literally employed to give my opinion. That is my job, to give my opinion. If I stopped giving my opinion, I wouldn't be doing my job. They are employed legally in the charter, the BBC charter, to not be politically biased. It's quite extraordinary.
Whenever these very unfortunate mistakes,
it's easy to
they
make.
always happen to be in just one direction.
Weird, well, that's just coincidence. Don't be a conspiracy theorist.
I'm very cynical.
The BBC is completely politically neutral, and I won't have anyone say anything different who isn't in an insane asylum. 10:24 is the time. We're going to take a quick break. Going to get to your calls coming in, not surprisingly, thick and fast already. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. Want to hear your thoughts on what Shabana Mahmood is announcing today, a raft of tough new measures to tackle illegal migration. But will they work? That's the question. Tell us why you think they will. Tell us why you think they won't. Love to hear your thoughts. That's up next. This is Talk.
Big news coming this December. Our Talk TV app is moving to the Talk app. can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. From Monday, 1st of December, the Talk TV app will no longer exist, so don't miss out. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk. Welcome back to the show. 10:27 is the time. I'm with Sam Armstrong. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer, and you are on the phone lines 0344 499 1000 on a beautiful, sunny, crisp, wintry Monday morning. But it makes you feel better when it's not grey, doesn't it? Let's enjoy a day of sunshine, folks. Let's talk to Michael. He's in Birmingham. Michael, what do you want to say?
So much. We need longer than 3 minutes. But look, just this thing about asylum seekers, inverted commas. Why can't we make them pay back their costs when they're granted asylum? So we got a student loans company that punishes our poor kids for studying. Why can't we make them pay back their accommodation, benefits, healthcare when
because they're never going to earn anything. Because weirdly, they're not all engineers and doctors.
Well, it don't matter. Let them have the bill for years like the kids.
What's the point? That's just a load of admin. No, we'll just be paying another entire quango to get out to spend more money.
Just use the student loan, because if they know they got a bill, they might not come. But also,
no, they'll never have to pay. No, genuinely, Michael, honestly, that's the sort of thing that Labour will announce and it won't actually do anything. No, the answer is A, you stop them coming, and B, the moment they arrive, their feet don't touch the ground, they're gone.
I said in the 1,000,000 to 1 cases, because they're economic migrants. I don't care how it sounds. I really don't care.
They're economic migrants, got no right to be here. It's not our the rest of the world is not our problem.
Exactly. But other things, look, let's think. If they go back on holes to the country they fled from, disqualify them.
Oh, yeah.
If they commit a crime, disqualify them. In fact, I'd basically disqualify them just to disqualify them. I know that makes me sound bad, but I'm sorry.
Is there a Y in the day? I mean, JK paid an audio from Sarah, a caller in Live, just basically saying, I'm done. I'm done with it. I've had enough. I'm done.
I'm with Sarah. I
totally.
live in Rome. This is right under my nose.
Yeah.
So, All right, leave it at that. Take
Absolutely.
care.
Michael, thank you very much indeed. Andrew's in Hertfordshire. Hello, Andrew. How are you?
Really good. How are you? Bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. You seem on good form this morning.
I'm feeling bright-eyed and bushy. My mood is so affected by the weather. It's absurd. Yeah. I've got blue skies and sun. Doesn't matter how cold it is. I'm just feeling a little bit more, bit more gung-ho than that sort of miserable grey rain we've had for the last week or so.
And we've all suffered with you on a miserable grey day when the train has been congested. So
we've been there. No one goes to work round my way on a Monday. They're all the TWATs. I can't say that word on air. Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursdays.
Yes. Now, this announcement, Julia, it's the what? It actually can't be implemented. And the reason that it won't do anything is because over pita bread and dips at Lord Alley's, this was run past Herma, the Attorney General.
Yeah.
And the one thing that Sam brilliantly identified, the European Court is still in charge. So all we're doing here is we're identifying the what, and your last caller was very good, as are all your callers, but it's not the how. There's no how we're going to do it now. First and foremost, Pakistan, that area of Pakistan where predominantly the grooming gang leaders have come from, no immigration from there at all. No flights from those countries. You can fly to them until they take back all their prisoners and then take anybody that lands at Dover. You want to be in Britain? Good. Here's Northern Ireland. You're on the border with Ireland in a tent. You've got a big Irish welcome across the border.
Off you go.
And you've got a really strong welcome in the area of London, Derry and Ulster. So come on, we've got to start. If they want to be here, be in Britain. Northern Ireland is Britain. Put them there.
Nah, no, I'm just genuinely, I think everyone's got everything kind of, upside down. Everyone keeps trying to deal with the issue of like, what do we do? How much money do we get? No, we want to stop them coming and stop them staying at all, full stop. And if they are, while they are here, for the short period of time they should be here, and I want them locked away. I think you could solve this. You could solve this in 2 weeks. And come the revolution, when I'm in charge, I will solve this problem in 2 weeks. I'm absolutely serious. It's not beyond the wit of man. You just have to not worry about being nice. You have to worry that Radio 4 won't think you're nice. I don't care. We're done. I don't care. I don't want any of these people here. Full stop.
You're 100% right, but they're identifying the what, not the how. And you're spot on. But how are we going to do it? How? Actually, and if you look at Venezuela and you look at Trump, he said, right, get all the criminals out of the jail, send them back. They laid them on the floor, they made them kneel, shaved their heads, and he broadcast those pictures to the American people. All of a sudden, immigration from Mexico dropped dramatically.
Yeah. I mean, there's no doubt at all. You know, they've been very successful. I mean, I would happily lead the ICE here in this country and just literally like, no, thanks very much. You've overstayed your visa. You've come here illegally. Bye-bye. Tootle off you go. I just don't know why anyone has qualms about any of this stuff. I really don't. You don't have a right to live anywhere you darn well please. 10:32 is the time we're going to take a break. Then we're going to talk to Reform UK's Alex Wilson to see what he makes of this, because I'm pretty sure that everything that's been announced by Shabana Mahmood, if it had been announced by Reform, something it already has, they'd be racist, wouldn't they? But apparently not if Labour do it. Wonder how that works. We'll talk about that up next. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Morning, welcome back to the show. 10:35 is the time, and this is Talk, the Home of Common Sense, with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. Commentator Sam Armstrong still with me. Coming up in the next half hour, we're going to talk to the independent economist Julian Jessup about what are we hearing about the budget. I mean, it's only a week and a bit away now, but we seem to have, there's an income tax rise, there isn't an income tax rise, is there a Manchester tax, milkshake tax, stealth taxes, you name it. But what's actually most likely to happen, and will any of it be enough without, small point, the spending cuts that are actually really needed? We'll talk about that coming up very soon. First up, though, let's talk to Alex Wilson. He's a London Assembly member for Reform UK and joins us regularly. Good morning to you, Alex.
Good morning, Julia.
Thanks so much for joining us. So, look, we've gone through a lot of these Shabana Mahmood announcements. A Trump-style visa ban, 3 countries in particular. 20-year wait for a permanent right to stay in this country. Refugees could be sent home if their home country is safe. It reassessed every 2.5 years. Jewellery and other assets seized to pay for accommodation from small boat migrants if they've got them, but not if they're family heirlooms. So they'll just say anything they've got is a family heirloom. And also basically advising judges, can you stop letting people stay using Article 8 of the ECHR because you're not interpreting it right? Is that all going to work?
Well, as you said just before the break, Julia, if this was a reform announcement, then the chances are the Labour Party, Starmer, Streeting, Mahmood, all of them would be decrying it as being racist and not what they'd want to do. So, let's give some credit to Shabana Mahmood here. She's at least recognising there's a problem. And we've had 39,000 small boat crossings this year alone. We'd already reached the equivalent of the whole of last year by the end of October. Yep. There's a massive crisis going on. And to her credit, she's acknowledged that. But that, I think, is where the credit has to run out, because unless you actually are prepared to do things like withdrawing from the ECHR, all of this is going to be clogged down in legal challenges, as it was under the Conservatives and as it continued to be under this government. There are two fundamental problems that she has. One is the Parliamentary Labour Party. We saw when the government was trying to not even cut the welfare bill, but just slightly slow down the growth of the welfare bill, Labour backbenchers up in arms, Starmer capitulated.
Wait a minute, do any of these measures require an Act of Parliament, though?
Well, they're saying that legislation will be required for some, as I'm sure it will, but that's when it comes to the Parliament, and Labour MPs will vote against it because they don't believe in the principle behind it. But the other key problem that she's got is Lord Hermer as Attorney General. It's all very well the Home Secretary saying to judges they need to interpret the law differently, but ultimately the government's top solicitor will not buy that. If the government as a whole are serious about doing this, then Keir Starmer needs to sack Lord Hermer as Attorney General. If he doesn't do that, which I don't think there's any indication he will, then I think it's fairly clear that Shabana will be left on her own, and it'll be yet another set of announcement that isn't followed through when it comes to crunch.
Let's face it, that's what's most likely going to happen, given even what happened under the Tories, let alone under this Labour government. They tend to back down on these things. And again, at least as tough measures under the Tories would have sort of actually garnered the Tory base. But I'm not sure the Labour base is going to be even that up for this. But you mentioned, things like, advice to the judges and in terms of how they interpret things in Article 8. But again, even if a judge did actually listen to that advice, not quite sure why they would. They're unaccountable and unelected. Whoever it is who loses their appeal, they can just appeal to the European Court, the European Convention, and then the European Court of Human Rights, and then they can have it overturned, because their interpretation is basically, if you've once met someone who once went to Britain, you've got a right to be here. So if you've got a plant pot here, you're allowed to stay here. So it's going to be challenged anyway, isn't it? Unless you leave the European Court of Human Rights, the European Convention on Human Rights.
Exactly. If you don't make that fundamental, bold step of leaving those international frameworks that we're part of, so the ECHR obviously being the main one, and the Human Rights Act that enshrines it in UK law, if you're not prepared to take that step, then this is just going to be, as everything the Tories tried, it's going to get bogged down in legal challenges. And we know where the Labour Party sits on that. They are weak, they are wet, they are woke, and they will always take the side of the lawyers rather than the side of the British taxpayer who's paying for all this.
How long do you think that is tenable? Because there's no doubt at all, that reform is leading the agenda on this issue and sort of pushing the other parties to vaguely more sensible positions. The Overton window has shifted, undoubtedly. And even though they're being dragged kicking and screaming, Labour and some parts of the Tory party, they are nevertheless being dragged. But how much do you think any of this is likely to change? And how much do you think that actually Labour will be forced to deal with this issue? Because even with the economy in the states it's in, a week and a bit before a budget, immigration, and illegal immigration in particular, is still number one as a concern for people.
There was a very interesting poll that came out over the weekend from Ipsos, and as well as the standard voting intention question, they also asked respondents to judge how they, which party they thought was best to deal with a whole range of different issues. And Reform came out on top for immigration on 35%, Labour on just, I think it was either 5% or 7%. So so far behind. And you're absolutely right. It's Reform that's leading the agenda, pushing that Overton window. The Conservatives are playing catch up as well. I know Chris Philp is now talking about withdrawing from the ECHR. Great, welcome to the party. Although again, I think there's probably a large element of Conservative parliamentary MPs who might not be so keen on that. A lot of those that were selected first during the Cameron era and the A-listers, they're be happier in the Lib Dems, a lot of them. But no, we're leading the agenda. If people are wanting to play catch-up, that's great, because at least we're talking about the right kind of issues. But fundamentally, when it comes to the next election, or as you said in your just before the break, come the revolution, you need to put people in charge to deliver this who actually believe in what they're doing and actually committed to making this happen. I don't think that will happen with the Labour Party. I don't even think it will happen with the Conservatives.
And that's been one of the issues, isn't it? These things just get torpedoed by the blob, by the civil servants, by the lawyers, and unless you actually believe in it and really want want it to happen are unlikely to actually happen. What do you make of the latest set of protests that we've seen? Thousands protesting against plans to house 600 asylum seekers at Crowborough, a military camp. Again, in a camp, but they'll be open. They'll be free to, walk around, and the camp is very close to the, to schools and the like. What do you make of those protests? Yet more and more ordinary people going out, on their own free time and protesting arrival of, hundreds of military-aged men arriving in their small towns.
Well, I've actually got a friend, a former work colleague who lives in Crowborough, and he's very concerned about this happening on his doorstep, as I think most people would be. But you've seen it whether it's hotels, whether it's HMOs, or whether it's these kind of camps that are now being mooted. Wherever they're being placed, the local residents are concerned, because we saw what happened at Epping, that horrific sexual assault on a 14-year-old girl, and that's what people are concerned about. They want to be safe. So if people have to be held somewhere, and to be fair, they do until they're deported, it needs to be somewhere secure. We were able to build pop-up Nightingale hospitals. Why can't we do something similar with this, but make it a very, very short-term thing while we're processing, while we're rejecting the asylum claims, and then while they're waiting to leave the country, because we can't go on like this. Thousands and thousands and thousands of people being held in all this different range of accommodation, costing the taxpayer, about 8 billion a year? Or 8 million a day. So it's horrific. And ultimately, we've got to say no, and we've got to have a system that is robust enough to detain, deport. Then we solve the problem. Stop the incentives to come in the first place. At the moment, all you have from Starmer is smash the gangs. He's not smashing the gangs. He's just smashing the record year on year.
This is it. Does anyone actually think any of this is actually going to happen? That is the really big question, isn't it? I don't think anyone really does. Can I ask you just about another story that's something that Reform has flagged up? And I'm desperately trying to find that out. I've just found the notes. Special needs children are in the majority in some schools because of the colossal overdiagnosis of conditions such as ADHD and dyslexia, according to Richard Tyson, in an article for The Telegraph. He's claimed that psychologists, taxis and even parents are making money from the system for diagnosing special needs conditions at the expense of the health of children. I have to say, my daughter was an academic private school. I was amazed to discover in some exams more children were given extra time than children who didn't get extra time for some sort of special need. And that was at an academically selective top school where most of the kids get A's and A stars. And they're still having parents who are, let's call it what it's called, cheating. It's what we used to call it in my day. It's called cheating, getting extra time for your kid. The reality is, every head teacher I've ever spoken to, every psychologist I've ever spoken to who's worth their salt says, this is being massively overdiagnosed. Parents are either in working class parents basically trying to get extra benefits, and middle class parents trying to game the system and get better exam results for their kids. How are you going to stop it?
Well, Richard Tice is about to be doing a press conference covering this in about 20 minutes' time, so look for the detail there. But certainly, as reported in his article this morning, he's identified the problem. Over the last decade, then we've been seeing the numbers of children being given these education, health and care plans rising by about 10% a year. Now, are our children really 10% more needy every year? I don't think so. So we've got to look at this problem of overdiagnosis, and it creates a whole load of cost as well. You have transport issues. I mean, one of the savings that I think Lancashire County Council, one of the councils that we're now running, has already identified and is delivering, is a £3 million saving on transport by using minibuses rather than taxis to transport some of these children to their school. That's the kind of thing we've got to look at, because otherwise all these councils are going to be so overburdened by the costs of SEND, adult social care, and so on. We're not going to have the money to fill in the potholes or pick up the bins or provide other school places for other kids. So it's a huge challenge. Richard's absolutely right to identify it. Let's watch the press conference in a few minutes' time and see what he comes up with as the answer.
Well, it's going to be going. We'll give some detail as we're on air. Alex Wilson, always good to talk to you, former UK's London Assembly member. Thank you for that. Sam Armstrong, I'd like you to come back in, actually, just on that issue of special education needs. If you do anything on education as a journalist, you will be inundated with desperate parents, the parents of kids who are really desperately in need of special needs, trying to get the help they need, trying to get their kid into a specialist school or whatever it is. And then you just know there are hundreds of thousands of kids now who get a diagnosis. I mean, I've met parents who go, oh, my kid's got dyspraxia. your kid's slightly clumsy. My kid's dyslexia. It's like I've watched her. She can read. She just with dyscalculia as well, can't do maths. Like, your kid is an average kid, just not a brilliant kid. Why have you put a label on your kid? But parents do this.
Yeah, and we spoke about this about 6 months ago. I've never had the reaction that I've had when we spoke about it. But I will say what I said then, and I will say it as firmly as I did then, which is, it is not the case, it cannot be the case that 60 to 70% of kids have got some medical deficiency. Kids come in a broad spectrum of abilities, personalities, enthusiasm. And by the way, if you've got a boy in particular, that boy is very likely to be hyperactive from age 4 through to 14 or beyond. And only more so if you feed him on junk, if you let him have sugary drinks, play games on his phone or on Xbox until 3 in the morning. If you've got a boy, he has not got, chances are overwhelmingly, he's not got ADHD. He needs to be sent outside to play. Stop worrying about strangers all the time.
Competitive sports,
get him
broccoli in bedtime.
Sports. If he's kicking off in class every morning, make him run around the house 10 times before you send him off to school.
No, but this is basic stuff.
Honestly, there are parents that need a little bit more shame before they go and
therefore we can then focus resources on the parents the children who really do need help, and really the parents are doing everything right and their children need help. And like with all these things, like the mental health crisis, we need to be helping those who genuinely need it and focusing resources on them, no waiting lists to get help and the like. But if everyone's got a problem, then no one gets help. That's the key thing. 10:47 is the time. Feel free to call in. We're taking all comers. 0344 499 1000. I'm telling you what, competitive sport, exercise, early bedtime and a healthy diet. There are very, very few things with children that cannot be solved with those things. They really are. I honestly, I'd bring Super Nanny in to bring her in to solve all these issues. Do get in touch. Love to hear your thoughts. 0344 499 1000. Up next, going to talk about small matter of the economy and the small matter of the omni-shambles budget. What is going to be in it? This is Talk.
Big news coming this December. Our Talk TV app is moving to the Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. From Monday, 1st of December, the Talk TV app will no longer exist, so don't miss out. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. This is Talk the Home of Common Sense with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer, coming up to 10:51. Let's talk about the budget. It's coming up in a week on Wednesday, and we've heard so many rumours about what's in, what's not in the budget. Is there a mansion tax? The income tax going to go up? Apparently not. A milkshake tax is later today, but we are going to also see some stealth taxes in terms of your income tax ban. Well, let's talk about it all with independent economist Julian Jessup. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
Thank you so much for joining us. Right, first of all, let's talk about the income tax. There was a talk that there was going to be an income tax rise of 2 pence in the pound, but also a national insurance cut for 2 pence in the pound. So the average worker wouldn't actually see a difference, but it would hit pensioners, would older people. We're now told that's not happening. Was it ever seriously on the cards?
Oh, I'm absolutely certain it was. I mean, the newspapers were widely briefed that this was a proposal that the Chancellor had submitted to the Independent Office for Budget Responsibility.
Yes, they didn't make it up.
No. I mean, there's no doubt about that. And all the signals a few weeks ago were that the Labour Party was preparing to break the manifesto commitments, and we had that so-called scene-setting speech from Rachel Reeves that was clearly designed to do that. So that plan was real and has been dropped. There's some attempt to explain this away in terms of some better forecast from the Office for Budget Responsibility.
Load of nonsense.
That's what I would politely at this time in the morning call nonsense. Any good news would already have been factored into the forecast before the plan to raise income tax was included. So it was inevitably about the fears of the political fallout, and that was certainly the views of the markets on Friday. So there was a big jump in the cost of government borrowing, because markets don't like this uncertainty. They think the government isn't serious about raising tax, let alone cutting spending.
So this is the key thing. This is the markets, the gilt markets, the 10-year yield. Is that it? So basically, this is the sort of debt that the government sells, and people buy it, and then they agree to pay a certain rate of interest. And basically, the more unsure they are about our economy, the higher the interest rate.
Yes, I mean, there are a number of things. I mean, first of all, there's the pure uncertainty. So the government says one thing and then changes its mind. So there's a U-turn there that the markets don't like. But also, and it might sound an odd thing to say, the markets actually quite like the idea of income tax going up because it's better than the alternatives. Income tax at least raises a reasonably certain amount of money. Whereas what we're likely to get instead is what's been described as a smorgasbord of smaller tax measures. I describe it as a dog's breakfast instead. So lots of itty-bitty tax increases. I mean, you mentioned the mansion tax, the milkshake tax and so on. It's highly uncertain how much money these will actually raise. And what's likely to happen also is, of course, in the days after the announcement, they will unravel as people like me go into the nitty-gritty detail and say the numbers don't add up.
But this is the interesting thing, isn't it? I can remember, I've covered so many budgets over the years. George Osborne and his pasty task and this budget and that budget. And normally they unravel in the hours and days afterwards when people go through this huge big book. They go through the numbers at the back. And often some of the biggest announcements aren't even announced on the floor of the Commons. They're just in the numbers, in the appendices afterwards. And people, the cleverer, folk like you go through the numbers and go, hold on a minute. This is a budget that's unravelling before it's even been announced and finalised. But surely the Chancellor at this point must know, because things have to be sent to be published, to be printed. The OBR, as you say, have to actually oversee it and agree to numbers. They must know by now exactly what's in it. So when we're told that there's going to be a mansion tax, so people who own a property, £2 million plus, that they're going to get taxed 1% of the value.
She could still be making decisions next weekend.
Right, okay, could be that late. Which again does show a lack of sort of thinking through. There isn't as you said, there isn't a plan. It's just my God, we've got no money, what do we do? Mad panic.
Well, one of the big problems here is that the budget this year is unusually late. And I think that could have been justified if they'd used the extra time to come up with a proper plan that they could explain to everybody. But of course, the opposite has happened. We're still, about a week and a half away from the budget, and there's clearly no overarching plan. And that's really damaging for the economy. So already in the last few months, there's been no growth at all. All the signs are that businesses have put hiring and investment on hold. Consumers have stopped spending. The housing market is frozen. So this has real costs when she does this. And as a former Treasury official myself, I find this really frustrating. We used to have this thing called budget purdah, where basically everybody just shut up ahead of the budget. This time we've had the opposite. We've had all sorts of rumours and leaks. I think I've counted.
It's budget diarrhea, for goodness sake.
Yeah, over 100 policy options, I think I've counted, have been floated, and some of them have been shot down since then. But it's very unclear what's going to be in the budget. And even when it's announced, it will be days, maybe weeks, before we really know what the implications are going to be.
And that's the thing. And also this itty-bitty, as opposed to when many of the, not just economists, but, the money markets are saying, look, if you're going to have to, deal with the actual budget and the balancing of the books, you need to do two things. One, widespread tax rises, so things like income tax or VAT, something that is spread across the whole economy and across everybody, and that's what they do in most other Western countries. That if you want to pay for your NHS and things like that, everyone at the bottom pays a lot more tax. But also spending cuts, and we know they couldn't even get through the most sort of cursory £5 billion in spending cuts on welfare. So the chances are them getting any welfare cuts through is negligible. But let's talk about the so-called stealth tax, and this is about the thresholds at which you start paying 20% tax, start paying 40% tax and the 45% tax, because a lot of people, it's quite complicated how these thresholds work, but we're looking at a huge number more people over the years previously and coming up who will end up paying much higher rates of tax, won't they?
Well, the first thing, I'll probably stop calling it a stealth tax, because it's a rather odd stealth tax. Everybody is talking about it. So, everybody will see loads of numbers on your programme and in the newspapers and elsewhere saying that as a result of this, you will be paying, £1,000 more than you would otherwise have done. So it's a very unsuccessful stealth tax. It's also one that, if Rachel Reeves does go ahead with it, she herself has described as a tax increase on working people. She discussed this option in the October budget last year and ruled it out, saying it would be a breach of their promises. So in a sense, it's just as much a breach of the manifesto commitments as raising the basic rate of income tax would.
That's quite extraordinary, isn't it? But an awful lot of people who, bearing in mind things like the 40% tax rate, that was supposed to be, that was for bank managers, rather than someone that worked on the till of a bank, isn't it? That's the thing. We're talking about nurses, teachers, police officers being pulled into that higher rate tax bracket where 40% tax taken on every extra pound they earn over about 50 grand. That, 50 grand, you're on, I know there are a lot of people earning a lot less than that. You'll say, well, I dream of earning that money. People on 50 grand are not feeling wealthy in large parts of the country.
And it's also, of course, at the lower end. You're right. Something like 10 million plus people will be paying the higher rate, the 40p rate. But also, we're talking about freezing the personal allowance, the very low level at which
the 12.5 grand before you pay any tax at all.
Exactly. So a lot of what everybody would describe as working people, those, for example, on the minimum wage, will start paying income tax. Pensioners who are just on the state pension will start paying income tax. So
these are people who they've hit by inflation the worst, because most of the stuff that's gone up is actually the essentials, and they have to pay for the heating and the food, and then they've had a pay rise if they're lucky to allow for that inflation, and the load of that pay rise then pushes them into the tax bracket, so they don't get much of that pay rise, so they're still worse off.
Yeah, so stepping back a bit, you made a very good point about we should be cutting spending instead. And if I were the Chancellor, the first thing I would do, and potentially the only thing I would do, is cut spending, or at least make sure it grows less quickly.
Yeah, but then you're going to upset, all your Labour voters or the public sector workers. That's the trouble. And everyone on welfare, it's not the party of working people anymore. It's the party of welfare. Julian Jessup, thank you very much indeed. Always good to talk to you, independent economist Julian Jessup. I'm going to get Sam Armstrong's thoughts about that. I'd love to hear your thoughts as well. 0344 499 1000. Up next, going to talk more about Shabana Mahmood. Is she going to stop the boats? You tell me. This is Talk.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very, very good morning. Welcome back to the show. We are fast approaching 3 minutes past 11 o'clock. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense. And I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Whether you're listening on DAB+ radio or on your smart speaker, whether you're watching on YouTube or on your connected device, thank you so much for your company. Always appreciate you joining us. And don't forget, if you do miss anything from the show, you can go to my YouTube page, the Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. Hit subscribe. You never have to miss a thing. I don't know, unless you're trying to miss a thing. Maybe you don't want to do that. I'm just throwing that out there. We like to offer all different opinions on this show. Anyway, coming up in this hour, we're going to talk more about Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood announcing today, this afternoon in the House of Commons, a lot of the measures we've been reading about in the papers over the last few days on basically trying to tackle illegal migration. Will any of it work? Well, there's the question. Plus, we're going to be talking about latest fun and games for Keir Starmer. We've got leadership challenges from Wes Streeting, we're told, from even Shabana Mahmood. Oh, maybe even his former Deputy Prime Minister, Angela Rayner, who, by the way, has yet to pay her £40,000 missing stamp duty bill. She's not very good at admin. You'd think she's now not Deputy Prime Minister, that she might, or Housing Secretary, she might have some time to do her admin, but apparently not. And we're also going to be talking about Keir Starmer under pressure to basically use his friendship with Donald Trump to persuade him not to sue the BBC for what we're now told by Donald Trump could be up to $5 billion. Bearing in mind, he often throws around lawsuits with these sort of numbers, usually settles for the tens of millions of dollars. But this, of course, over the outrageous BBC fixing of those and fiddling with those speeches by Donald Trump, not just in Panorama, but also in a Newsnight interview, a Newsnight package of on that speech on January the 6th. They're back to rights, aren't they? My thing is, I just don't want to be anyone as a licence fee payer who has to pay any of that fine. It seems to me people at the BBC should pay it. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on all of that. Give us a call. 0344 499 1000 is the number to get in touch. 87222 is a message to send on Talk. You can send us a message on X at Talk TV. And of course, our calls are charged at a national rate and text costs one standard network rate message. In particular, I want to know what you think of Shabana Mahmood's announcement and what she wants to do in terms of stopping the boats. Let me go through some of what she's saying. Visa bans, Trump style, we're told, visa bans for countries which basically won't take back their wrong-uns, whether they're foreign criminals or illegal migrants. And that's the target they're looking at is Angola, Namibia and Democratic Republic of Congo in the first instance. There are 4,000 of their nationals we currently can't get rid of. But we are talking about a very slow, over the years, sliding scale of basically saying, look, if you please don't take people back, then we won't allow you to do this or that, as opposed to Monday morning, you can't fly to this country, end of, nothing to discuss. I don't care if you're the president of that country or if you're a tourist from that country. No one comes in, full stop, until you start taking your wrong-uns back, which I think will perhaps have more impact. Permanent settlement only granted after 20 years, not 5 years, to those who get right to stay. Fast-track deportations, limited number of appeals. They can't just drag them out forever. Refugee status only ever granted on a temporary basis, so reviewed every 2.5 years. So you could be sent back at some point if your home country becomes safe. Judges told not to use the Article 8 right to a family life and privacy under the European Convention of Human Rights to allow migrants to dodge deportation, but also the possible confiscation of migrants' money and valuables to help pay for their accommodation. Not though if it's a family heirloom or your wedding ring, but won't they just say everything they've got is a family heirloom? Give me a break. A lot of this is following Danish policy, which some are saying is really, really successful. But where the Danes have succeeded, they've probably been a bit stricter. An anti-ghetto law also in effect, but also requirements on people speaking Danish. Well, given that our English, our language is like the second language of the world, I'm not quite sure we'll be able to use some of those measures, but will it be enough? I do want to hear your thoughts. 0344 499 1000. Let's put that question to my guest joining me today, as always on a Monday, commentator Sam Armstrong. Do you think any of this will stop the boats?
Complete and utter piffle. I have never seen an announcement just crumble so quickly. We're going to see Trump-style visa bans, only not really, because we're going to do a 10-year ratchet-up building process and their countries will be able to appeal all the way. We're going to seize their jewellery. Oh no, well, not Not if they say it's their great Aunt Nellie's lost necklace that they inherited years ago. Yeah, the same people that are coming in here and pretending that they're 17. Oh yeah, we're all mysteriously 17.
With a receding hairline.
With a receding hairline and a great big bushy beard. Oh yeah, we're going to suspend human rights laws. Except we're not, because we're going to stay in the European Court of Human Rights. We're going to change family protections. Only, not really. We're going to say they've got to go after 3 years. Only they'll still be able to appeal on the basis of their human rights. This is just infuriating, to walk into a television studio or to turn on the radio every single Monday morning. We've had it for 4 years now. To see an announcement from the Home Office, whether it was the Conservatives, whether it's Labour, saying we're going to solve migration this week.
Ta-da!
And they never do. It's not worth the paper it's written on. It's an insult to everyone that has to live in this country, that has to listen to it.
And pay for it.
And to pay for it. And to face the indignity of wherever you are in this country, having the problems of this crisis wash up on your doorstep, whether that's in places like Epping, whether that's in Crowborough, whether that's in Lincolnshire, in the middle of nowhere.
End of my street, London.
Everybody is being affected by it. Everyone's seen hotel prices go up. Everyone's seen the crime that this leads to. Everyone has seen just the slow, quiet degradation of what British public and civic life means. And everybody in their own life knows people who now feel unsafe walking about the streets.
I think you'll find, if you check with the stats, we are told again and again and again that crime is going down. I just don't know anyone who feels that. I mean, are we all making it up when our bags or our phones are stolen or our cars are broken into or burglaries or the mass scale shoplifting? Are we all just making it up in our heads?
There is a national gaslighting going on by far too many in the establishment, and that includes journalists, that includes politicians, that continue to tell us that crime is going down when everybody can see that it's not. You walk into your local supermarket, whatever that is, it now looks like you're going through airport-style security because everything is getting pinched. You need to ask permission to take a bottle of shampoo at half the shops I've been into recently. Why is that happening? Why is that happening? Because we have imported in large part a massive crime problem that used to be the preserve of the third world.
I get the tube to and from work every day, and I'm absolutely losing the will over the number of people who just push the barriers. I'm genuinely, I'm that far from really snapping. I would love Robert Jenrick, I know you work with closely, that video we did tackling people, and you remember the reaction of the authorities, you're not allowed to film on the London Underground. Oh, do one, for goodness sake. I mean, I spoke to a member of staff actually at the train station. I get off at London Bridge, and it's a guy just pushed through and he goes, there's nothing I can do about it. I said, does it not do your head in? Because I don't know why I've just paid an absolute fortune. I pay a fortune to travel in central London. And I don't understand, why do I have to pay? Why do I have to pay? He doesn't. How does that work? And I'd heard the guy speak, because the guard spoke to him. And again, he wasn't British. He wasn't British. I mean, it's not going to be a surprise. He wasn't British. Although I have to say, an awful lot of the lads who are doing it and girls who are doing it in my local station where I live, they are. I speak to them and I remonstrate with them. And it is just that whole feeling of like the whole thing is just coming to pot. Here, we've got enough of our own wrong-uns. We don't want to import anymore. And that is the main issue people have. We're done with importing everyone else's wrong-uns.
But Julia, you are paying for your train fare, and you see people who are not. You are paying for your shopping, and you see people who are not.
You're paying for your rent and your mortgage.
And your house. And down the road, you see people who are not. You're paying for theirs too. And what has Rachel Reeves got in store for you? Well, she's got a mansion tax. And by the way, there's no exemption to that tax if it's a family heirloom. If it's been in the family for generations, if your grandmother worked really hard and they gave it to you afterwards and you paid inheritance tax on it at 40%, well, now you're going to get slapped with another tax. Why? Because Rachel Reeves didn't have the stomach to stand up to her own backbenchers to stop us having to pay out hand over fist for people who aren't working.
And this is where people say, oh, well, why aren't people worried about the economy? No, the immigration issue is an economic issue because and legal and illegal. Because we're constantly told, it's unbelievable, how much the contribution. Yes, of course there are people who are contributing, and there are lots of people we've got in politics at many different sides of the party who are the children of migrants or migrants themselves who've done really well, worked really hard, and they've done well in business or they've moved into politics. Well, absolutely great, happy to have that. But the reality is the economic argument for mass uncontrolled immigration, whether it's from the EU, but particularly when it's from third world countries. And yes, we're not PC, they are third world countries, then that's why they want to come here, guys. It is unsustainable, and there is a cost, and it's not just an economic cost. There's a community cost, there's a social cohesion cost, and there is a criminal cost, and there is just a huge economic cost, and that's where people they've literally had enough. When Shabana Mahmood talks about this stuff, I mean, she's got some credentials. She's talking tough. She's being hard. She's been talking to the future Tory leader. Could be a Tory leader with these announcements, couldn't she? Reformer Nigel Farage said she's welcome to join his party. The reality is, she ain't going to get this past Lord Home of the Attorney General. No. She's not going to get this stuff past the judges and the human rights law or the European Convention on Human Rights. Barely anything's going to change, but it's going to talk tough. Do governments, I mean, the government, the last government you supported, the Tories, I mean, you were very critical of a lot of the stuff they did. And in fact, the man you helped for the leadership campaign, Robert Jedd, resigned from the Home Office because they weren't doing enough to try and tackle illegal migration. The reality is they keep thinking that, question. Do they think that the measures they instigate are actually going to make a difference? No. Or do they just think that if we just talk the talk, it'll be enough and most people will play along?
They're not trying to get anything past Lord Hermit. They're not trying to get anything past the judges. They're not trying to get anything past their mates in fancy North London. They're trying to get something past you. They're trying to get something past the people that are listening to this programme. They work very, very hard. They employ some really, really bright people to write these announcements, to get broadcast over the airways and on other stations very uncritically every single Monday, where people are told that everything is about to get fixed. They know it's not. They know because they've done the work behind this, and they knew that, oh well, we're not taking it off them if they say it's a family heirloom. A government minister, Alex Norris, said this morning that we're talking about people who come over with big bags of gold rings. Yeah, come on, that is not the problem that we're dealing with, right? We are not dealing with people with massive amounts of gold that are breaking into the country. We're dealing with people that want to come here and work, largely in the black economy, because they think they can get more money here than they can do in France, primarily, which they can. What they are trying to do is continue to pull the wool over the eyes of the British public. And quite unfortunately for them, it ain't working anymore, because there has reached a breaking point. The country has reached a point in which it is no longer prepared to listen to these lies week in, week out, to take them incredulously. We now understand, because it is on every high street, it is in every community, that this is happening at a more than industrial scale, that this country has been wholesale invaded over the past 30 years by millions of people, some of them legally, but many hundreds of thousands, if not millions, have broken into this country unlawfully. I
think there are loads of people who've arrived. Okay, we talk about the small boat numbers and lorry numbers and people who've overstayed their visas but apply for these bogus colleges, student visas. I had people living in a flat I used to live in, people living in the flat above, and they were all students. I mean, they weren't students. I can absolutely assure you. I know they did. I know their shift patterns at local restaurants. I'm going to say, and they're overstaying. And again, it's on a mass scale. I think it's probably way bigger than even the authorities have a clue of. And again, I always cite back to the EU people who were coming here legally for years, and when people were given the right, can you just sign up when we left? Can you just sign up and just let us know you're here and you've got prove your right to stay? You've been living here for 5 years plus or whatever. And they thought there were going to be 3 million, and there were 5.5 million. They literally didn't know how many people were in the country by 2.5 million. If that doesn't tell you that they haven't got you think they've got a clue how many people are here from India or Pakistan or Bangladesh or Nigeria or Somalia or Eritrea? Are you kidding me? These people have never been in the system. It's quite extraordinary. Talking of Bangladesh, just some breaking news in terms of the actual sentence, but earlier this morning, Sheikh Hasina, Bangladesh's ousted Prime Minister, was convicted of crimes against humanity. She's a former leader. She's exiled in India. She was tried in her absence after the UN said up to 1,400 people may have been killed in violence. She ordered a deadly crackdown on a student-led uprising last year. More than 800 people were confirmed dead and about 14,000 injured. And she has now been sentenced to death. Well, they don't do things by halves in Bangladesh. She is also, quite by coincidence, the aunt of Tulip Siddiq, Labour MP. For, I think, Hampstead and Highgate, who was the government's anti-corruption minister and had to resign after allegations against her in a Bangladeshi court of being involved in her own aunt's corruption. I mean, you have to laugh or else you'd cry. But I mean, yeah, that is quite serious stuff. They don't mess about in Bangladeshi courts, do they?
It's nice to have the grown-ups back in charge. Isn't it good to have the serious, responsible people running the country? I do
find it extraordinary. I mean, again, Tulip Siddiq, she's actually my MP. One of those, she's very much a hand-wringer, or, do the right thing person. And again, and we know very close links, money, help, contributions and stuff towards her campaigns. A flat, the way you just get given a flat, you're not quite sure who's giving it to you. Easy mistake for all of us to make. Could happen to all of us at any time. But it was from my parents. What was it? I don't know. But she has never spoken out against her aunt, even though we know she has really close relationship with her, and she has never spoken out when her aunt would bang to rights, absolutely corrupt as God knows what, her aunt, but also an absolutely vicious ruler who has not just imprisoned but allowed the torture and murder of opposition MPs, of opposition leaders in Bangladesh. Tulip Siddiq, Labour MP, not a word.
She was convicted, Tulip Siddiq's aunt was convicted on the basis of a recording of her saying that she had ordered the shooting of unarmed protesters. Yeah, right? Tell me more about how Labour is the party that protects human rights. I mean,
well,
please.
it's just, there you are. Thoughts on that, guys? Anyway, let's talk a little bit more about Shabana Mahmood, though, what the specifics, what she's going to do. 20-year wait for a permanent right to stay. That sounds good, but apart from the fact that we know people aren't going to be sent home. We just know people aren't going to be sent home. Refugees told may be sent home if their country is safe. I mean, the key word there being home. If you're home, you're not your home yet. I mean, the Ukraine scheme was very, very specific. It was on a temporary basis until the Ukraine war ends, and then people go home. Full stop, nothing to discuss.
Except if you get a cat, then your family life means that you get to stay in the
relationship with someone.
And she says, I'm going to go off to Strasbourg and I'm going to try and get reform of these rights. Yeah, really? Are you? Paul, the
like David Cameron reforming the EU. Yeah, always work.
Except it's even tougher because she needs unanimity of every country in the Council of Europe, which is wider membership than the EU ever was. Some of which are ruled by far left governments, which are never going to sign.
There is this fundamental issue, and we still have this on the left. I mean, the Lord Homers, the Keir Starmers, the Yvette Coopers, they're all signed up to this madness. And the BBC in its entirety. This idea that there were no human rights in this country until we were part of both the EU and the European Convention on Human Rights. And that if we leave the European Convention on Human Rights, it's a signal to the world that everyone could just kill anyone they want.
To all intents...
But also that we will no longer have human rights, because all of this is enshrined in the Human Rights Act as a part of it. But it's only... Our human rights since that time have only gone through that route because we signed up to it. Most of the human rights that are enshrined in the European Convention on Human Rights were those that were already in existence in Britain, and we went, hey guys, it would be a good idea if you all had this. What with us having just saved you all from fascism and communism?
To all intents and purposes, human rights, the right of the individual against the states, was invented in this country. Yep. Go back in a long line of history from Alfred the Great, Magna Carta, the Bill of Rights, the English Civil War, all through that time, the Great Reform Acts of the 1800s. We invented this, which is why when you look at countries around the world that come from Britain, the United States, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, all countries, by the way, that don't have the ECHR, what do they have? They've got the best rights framework in the world. Why? Because rights come from Britain. We didn't need these people overseas in Europe. We didn't need these mad ideas. We had a sensible rights framework which balanced the rights of the individual against the collective, but didn't go into these mad diversions into cats and chicken nuggets and every other piece of junk you've ever heard of. And it drives me insane that the entire framework of the way that we are governed is premised on a lie about our country, that our history is something to be ashamed of. It isn't. Don't let anyone tell you that this is not the greatest country that there ever was, that gave the world so much of what has...
Even America, Americans are utterly convinced that no other country has anything that they have. They really are deluded on that front. But a lot of what they came from British notions. Can I ask you also about the budget? I do want to get into this, the budget omnishambles, because we've got this stealth tax, which is, as our Julian Jessup, our economist, was saying, and it's not really a stealth tax, everyone seems to know about it now, but these income tax thresholds. And the main thing is people are going to look at their pay packet and go, well, I've got a pay rise and I'm earning more, but for some reason I don't seem to have anything more in my actual pocket because I got that extra pay rise, but I'm now being charged 40 pence in the pound instead of 20 pence in the pound. Even people on minimum wage with the self-taxes, if you leave the threshold at which you start paying tax at 12.5 grand, but actually we've seen inflation, it was 11% or 1.4%, whatever, and then more and more people, they get a pay rise, it goes up, but then that pushes them into more of their income being in the under basic rate of tax. Talk about a lot more people paying tax without there being an official raising of the rate of income tax. But at the end of the day, a lot of people just feel like it's not worth it. They go out to work, they work hard, they get on, whether it's getting on to a better job and earning more hours at minimum wage, whether it's getting a better job and getting a promotion and paying 40%, earning over 50k a year, but they don't feel better off. And the reason they don't feel better off because they're not. Yeah, and it's yet another attempt to pull a fast one over the public, saying we're not raising taxes like we promised not to, yet they are. It's absolutely the wrong thing for the economy, just what the doctor ordered, another round of tax increases. They're failing to deal with the fact that because of how little you earn when you're in work, that so many people are just checking out of the system and going on to welfare because, frankly, why wouldn't you? But what it really strikes at is actually a betrayal of what it means to be British, to participate in the economy. It used to be that if you worked hard in this country, if you were, say you were a police officer and you became a police sergeant, say your wife was a nurse and say that she became the sister on the ward, doing exactly what we want everyone in this country to do. It used to be that the trade-off for that is you got a nice house, maybe 4 beds, maybe it was detached on a modern housing couple of holidays a year. Couple
of kids. You could afford to have a couple of kids to send them off to their clubs, and one of those holidays you may have even got to go to Spain or to Centre Parks. You'd have a couple of cars on the drive. No one could afford Centre Parks. A couple of cars on the drive. Maybe if Dad was really into his car and he worked hard, he got a 3 Series, BMW 3 Series. Maybe he got to watch the sports on the telly on a weekend. So many people I know will turn around to me and they'll just say, we can't afford that anymore. Yeah. We can't afford that trip to the cinema that we used to do sometimes on a Saturday. We can't afford a takeaway on a Friday night anymore. We've dropped the Sky Sports package. We've dropped the TV. That BMW, well, now we've got a Honda or something else. I've heard it a million times. And yet there's the people who've done the right thing and worked hard and were on a promise. And that's the thing. People do just feel poor and they don't feel they're getting anything for all their hard work. Yeah, and now that's a dangerous state of affairs. Rachel Reeves is holding out her hand and saying, more please. Money, please. I'll have some more. To go to them. To go to people who aren't working, who broke into our country illegally, to train drivers because Labour's got its mates in the unions that it needs to placate. Yeah. It's just not fair and it's just not right. I know. I genuinely, when people talk about how, we are that close to some sort of civil unrest, people really rising up. I mean, I like to think that the British people don't do that. I mean, we have a long history of not doing that under the greatest provocation, including, the Brexit wars as well, when we were being outrageously treated by the Ramonas trying to stop Brexit actually happening. But I think people really have just gone, we're done. Again, we're done with all this and it's just not fair. That said, whoever does get in next time round, because this lot aren't going to get to grips with it, we are going to be talking about some absolutely brutal spending cuts, absolutely brutal. But they'll do the country good long term. They'll even do the people who are victims of them good long term. But we are going to have to do them because our current, government, national finances are utterly unsustainable, and all we are doing is every time we don't take the pain ourselves in terms of the benefits and the cuts and the taxes and so, we are just pushing it onto our kids, and our kids at this rate, God knows when they're going to be able to retire, God knows when they're going to be able to ever buy a home, God knows when they're ever able to go to, even afford a foreign holiday at this rate. Genuinely, we are pushing stuff on. It's getting to the point where it's actually immoral. It's actually immoral what we're doing right now. And I'm just so ashamed that politicians, but also voters, stop demanding more for paying less. It's not sustainable anymore. But we need to we need to go back to basics. Literally, the government go, what have we got? And what can we actually afford? What can we pay for? I want every single nonsense thing that the government spends money on. I want that sorted. We need full Elon Musk Doge style, but better than he did it system. Just cut that spending. Every quango, all of that, all gone. The best thing we could ever do is put about 200,000, 300,000 highly paid quangocrats
onto the dole, because they are bleeding us dry, these people. They really are. 11:26 is the time. I want to hear from you. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. Get in touch on anything we're talking about. In particular, I want to hear what you think about the Home Secretary's plan to tackle illegal migration. Do you think anything of this is actually going to make any difference? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Give us a call. Your call's up next. This is Talk.
Big news coming this December. Our Talk TV app is moving to the Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. From Monday, 1st of December, the Talk TV app will no longer exist, so don't miss out. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Morning, welcome back. This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense. 11:29 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Let's get straight to your calls. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. A lot of you want to have your say in Shabana Mahmood, the Home Secretary's announcement coming up this afternoon on how to tackle, tough new measures to tackle illegal immigration. Do you think any of them are going to work? Let's talk to Ray, who's in Colchester. Morning to you, Ray.
Yes, good morning, and a fantastic rant before the adverts, by the way.
That was young Sam.
So listen, it's a Monday. It's another announcement from our glorious government, leading us forward, ever forward to the nirvana that is out there for us. With a bunch of announcements that sound great, tick all the right boxes, which have absolutely zero chance of getting through. A Labour Party who hate our Prime Minister more than the ordinary person does, and a Labour Party so split that basically, literally, it makes the Monty Python comedy routines of, from the life of Brian look ridiculous because they hate each other more than they do anybody else. So these have got no chance of going through, but they were never meant to go through. Yeah. It's just another headline-grabbing announcement that people who, most people, pay no real attention to the news, but they'll remember some of this. And
hold on a minute, though. Here's the thing. Shabana Mahmood's got the job. She's moved from Justice Secretary just at the right time. She knows that her future political, career rests on her dealing with this. Now, for voters, to get support from voters, she needs to deal with this. But, of course, if she deals with this, she won't get support from Labour Party members or Labour backbenchers. But
the point is that Starmer is so loathed by everybody, completely around the cabinet without Labour, that basically the blame will be shifted effortlessly to Starmer. So that's who will be blamed. That's already been built into place now. And so when he eventually goes, you have, it would have worked if it wasn't but for him. Vote for me now on that, So that's all been built into this. These are, listen, they have no intention of stopping the boats. They have no intention of stopping, and let's call it what it is. It isn't mass immigration. This is an invasion that is happening to this country to change the face of this country as rapidly as possible. And whatever happens to the local people just does not matter. It really doesn't. And may I just say something on what you were saying about the wages and all the rest of it, and certainly what's been done to our young people. There was an old saying in the Soviet Union towards the end and the saying was, if they pretend to pay us, will pretend to work. And that's really where we've now entered up.
Just going through the motions. Very fantastic call. Thank you very much indeed. Let's go to Vernon, who's in Staffordshire. Hello, Vernon. What do you want to say?
Julia, good morning. We are being run by a group of pathological liars who've lied to this country from day one.
Vernon, can I stop you just 1 second? I'm loving what you're saying, but it's quite a fuzzy line. Can you get closer to the microphone?
1 second, Julia.
I think he's on.
Any better, Julia?
That's much better. Were you on? What was it? Speakerphone or something? It never works.
No. I've got my AirPods in my ears.
Oh, that's what it is.
Taken one out.
Lovely.
Sorry.
Right, that's better. So you're saying we're run by liars?
Pathological liars from day one. It started off with the year with his £16,000 worth of free clothes.
Yeah.
And it just continues. And now they just take the mickey out of us every day. And the latest Home Secretary, this will make no difference whatsoever. They have no intention of reducing illegal immigration. That's what they're like. Tony Blair opened the borders many, many years ago. Nothing is going to change. Love listening to Sam, emotional basket case just like me. But reality sets in, nothing's going to happen. We're going to be talking in another month and there'll be another thing and another thing. I don't believe a word. But then, to be fair, Julia, as a businessman, which I am, I don't have a cashier do my accounts. You know, if I want to sue someone, I get a lawyer. If I want to do my business year-end accounts, I get an accountant.
Yeah.
Politicians are the only people who are without qualifications. So just think about this, Julia. Your hard-earned taxes, you're a high-rate taxpayer, are being spent by a bunch of idiots who were unqualified to even buy the dinner at McDonald's.
I think there was a rule that the idea was that the politicians wouldn't have to have a certain qualification, so anyone can stand. I support that, but I do worry when a lot of them have got the same qualification as me, because there we are. Vernon, great call. Thank you so much. 11:34 is the time. Up next, going to take a quick break. Then we're going to be hearing from a former Labour Special Advisor, Kevin Marr, about whether or not we should try to even stop the boats. That's up next. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. 11:36 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Sam Armstrong still with me. Get your thoughts on what my next guest has to say. He's Kevin Marr. He's a former Labour Party Special Advisor. He's now Associate Editor of Labour Uncut. A very good morning to you, Kevin.
Morning, Julia.
Thank you for joining us. Just first of all, what do you make of Home Secretary Shahbaz Mahmood and her announcement of tough new measures to tackle illegal migration, Trump-style visa bans, we're told, 20-year wait to settle permanently, telling judges to interpret the ECHR Article 8, the right to a family life and privacy, differently. Do you think any of these are going to actually achieve anything? Well, caller, we just had Ray and indeed Vernon both saying zero chance of anything actually changing. What do you think?
I mean, I totally understand. I was listening to the gentleman just before the break, and I totally understand people's cynicism about all of this because, I mean, you know, hand on heart, the British public has been failed by the red team and the blue team on immigration for a very long time. We've embarked on a policy of effectively open door immigration, but at a time when the British public have time after time after time expressed complete opposition to that, but the politicians have carried on anyway. So we've ended up in a mess where there's a crisis of governance amongst as much as anything else around immigration, and different governments come in and try and crack down on it and say they will, and then they don't. And of course, most significantly recently, I suspect, with the Boris wave of a few years ago post-Brexit. Yeah. So this is a line in the sand today. It's a really important day. It's an important day for the life of this government, which has been slipping and sliding.
Yeah,
of course,
but we've all heard that so many times, haven't we? That's why. I mean, my audience is just totally, we're just completely and utterly cynical now. We're just like, oh,
yeah, absolutely. I don't blame
nothing's going to happen. But some of this, only some of it, but some of it does involve, acts of Parliament. The reality is, Labour MPs aren't going to vote this through. They've got 412 Labour MPs, for goodness sake. You can't get anything done in Parliament without a majority of Labour MPs supporting it. They wouldn't even support a £5 billion cut to welfare that was completely and utterly needed. In which case, for goodness sake, the chances of them voting for something like this, they're not going to do it.
I think there's two things. One is the package that Shabana Mahmood has articulated over recent days and is going to announce in the Commons at 3:30 this afternoon. Is it a bold package? Is it a workable package? Is it going to be popular in the country? Because I think that's the crucial thing. Are people going to say, you know what, this sounds like it might start to make some difference and turn us in a different direction? And if it does, Labour MPs are going to have to listen to that very carefully, because where people on the traditional Liberal left are and where they reside and where the British public resides on this issue are in two different places and have been for a very long time. And that's not sustainable anymore. I think what Shabana Mahmood is doing is very bold, is very brave. She's putting her neck on the line. It's big stakes for her, because if she gets this right, drives these changes through, starts to turn not only the issue of immigration around, but public perception with it, then she is teed up to be Keir Starmer's successor, because she's grabbed the nettle and done the hard job and the dirty job in British politics.
Well, indeed. I mean, that's the thing, though. If something that's popular with the British public may not be popular with Labour MPs. And we know, we've seen this with Wes Streeting, actually. He talks stuff on the health service, and we've got this doctor strike. Got day 4 now, the doctor strike. And it's interesting, in the NHS saying, look, actually, there are fewer and fewer doctors actually taking part in these BMA strikes, just saying, look, the BMA doesn't represent us anymore. But you've got exactly the same issue which he faces, which is, again, people go, oh, he seems quite sensible and sane. Yeah, but he's one of the least popular when it comes to Labour Party members. The funny thing about Labour Party members is when they had the opportunity, they voted for a full-on socialist like Jeremy Corbyn. And that's what they really want. They're not happy with Starmer, not because he's not getting the job done on the economy and on immigration. They're unhappy with him because they think he's too right-wing.
I think there's been a change, certainly, in the composition of the Labour Party membership in recent years, and that's I think it's gone down quite a lot, and I think a lot of the idealistic people that came in to support Jeremy Corbyn have toddled off somewhere else, and they're probably with Zach Polanski, and they're probably with
I would say the unrealistic people.
Jeremy Corbyn again. So I think the people who are left in the Labour Party tend to be a bit more hard-headed. Yes, of course, as idealistic people, but the issue about governing is it's that hackneyed phrase. It is about hard choices, and this government has got one hard choice after another. It's got one full inbox of difficult decisions per day.
Well,
a lot of these things are doing things that you might not necessarily want to, but need to happen.
And that's part of the issue.
Shabana Mahmood and Wes Streeting are in that pole position of sort of saying, look, we've got two very difficult jobs to do at the Home Office and at Health. If we can make a big difference and start to turn things around ahead of the general election, then we have shown that we can govern and that we can take tough decisions. And that's the message really for a lot of their colleagues
somebody
aren't doing that.
Somebody won't take the tough decisions. This is Rachel Reeves. We've got the budget in a week and a half's time, and we know what the money markets are saying. They don't care whether it's Liz Truss, they don't care whether it's Rishi Sunak, David Cameron, or whoever is in charge. They don't care. They just want the numbers to add up, and they're saying, look, you're going to have to do big spending cuts and some big across-the-board tax rises. Now, we're looking at stealth taxes that, as an economist pointed out earlier, aren't really stealthy anymore in terms of the thresholds being frozen. Something the Tories have done for years as well, meaning more and more people get dragged into higher rates of tax than they otherwise would be in. And again, that high rate, the 40% tax rate, which 20 years ago was a tax rate for seriously high earners, is now your average vaguely successful earner are paying that money. But in terms of where the budget is, we're told, that one of the reasons why there was a lot of talk about a leadership challenge after the budget is because, frankly, what's going to be in the budget next week is so bad for the government. There was talk of, income tax rises, breaking that manifesto commitment and goodness knows what else, that actually, it's going to finally be the death knell for Keir Starmer. What do you make of all the shenanigans of all the leadership bids, the Morgan McSweeney briefing that apparently wasn't him but everyone thinks was, Angela Rayner apparently putting her tuppence worth in as the former Deputy Prime Minister? Do you think there is going to be a leadership challenge to Keir Starmer before Christmas, or do you think it's going to wait until after May? And if there is one either of those times, is he going to stay the course?
Well, I mean, last week was a week from hell, I think, for the government from its perspective. And you can't afford very many of those because, you're right a minute ago to mention, the bond markets are looking at this and sort of saying we want stability and predictability. And we want to know that the government can actually make good on its golden rules and make good on its commitments. And there isn't too much double speak.
But last week's
and the politicians behind them want that as well.
But last week's ban week was entirely self-confected.
It was. Pick your metaphor. I mean, they shot themselves in the foot. They're on about rolling the pitch. They managed to roll over their own feet at the same time. I mean, it was an absolute shambles. I mean, and government communications, unfortunately, throughout the life of this government, have been a shambles. Let's be honest about it. But I mean, what happened last week was clearly there's an intersection point when Rachel Reeves has got some better news on the state of the economy, and rather than managing all this with a bit of theatre in the run up to the budget and perhaps even on budget day itself, they've managed to kind of just like splurge this all out. So you've ended up with on one day the government has got a 30 billion black hole and it needs to raise income tax to fix that. The next day, it doesn't need to raise income tax because that black hole is apparently 7 billion. And in British government terms, that's small change, frankly. She can handle that and she can manage that. But they've managed to turn what was a good news story, frankly, the economy probably in slightly better health than we realise, and they've managed to turn that into disaster last week, which is when you look out sometimes in government, you look out and you start slipping and sliding, and it's very difficult to get your footing again. Yeah. But you can't afford to make those kinds of gaffes a week and a half out from one of the most important budgets in the last 50 years.
I mean, this is the thing. I mean, let's face it, we know it's Rachel Reeves' second budget. It's going to be her final budget. There's no doubt at all about that. What do you make of the runners and riders to take over? Because no one seems to think that, something massively huge has to happen for Keir Starmer to stay the course and manage a full 2 years as Prime Minister. We've had the first Labour MP openly calling for him to go, Clive Lewis. I mean, he's normal, usual suspect. Don't think you can read much into that. But the fact that these bids for taking over from him are now so blatant and obvious. I say, Angela Rayner coming back out of the woodwork. Not time to do her admin. She hasn't paid her extra 40 grand on her stamp duty that she's owed, but she apparently has got time to be offering jobs if she gets the top job to other MPs.
I think that Labour history tells you two things. One, it tells you that there's a particular pathology about being in government where eventually everybody starts to turn on each other. And perhaps the Tories in recent years have been the same. But they've been historically better at managing those divisions than Labour has been. Labour was like this in the 1940s, the 1960s, the 1970s. And of course, even through the Blair Brown years, which were relatively successful. So there is always that kind of pathology of people thinking, I can do your job better than you can, mate. Can you get out of the way and let me have a go? So that's definitely going on. But this is, I think, classically a parliament of two halves. What we can see at the moment is, reforms miles ahead of everybody. We could have a major structural realignment in British politics. The economy is not doing desperately well, and we've got this international kind of uncertainty pretty much any direction around the globe that you care to look. Now that's what we're dealing with right now, but it doesn't necessarily mean that by 2027 that's what we're going to be dealing with then. And my suspicion,
I think it's going to be a lot worse.
Well, it may be, you never know. But I think Labour MPs would be a bit crazy at this point to say let's get rid of Keir Starmer and put somebody else in position, because they've got to play his cards. Yeah.
I keep saying to everyone, it's the same in tray. That's the issue. Kevin Mark, absolutely fascinating to talk to you. Do come back again soon. Former Labour Special Advisor, Associate Editor of Labour Uncut. Really appreciate that. Very quick thought from Sam Armstrong. Would they be crazy to get rid of Keir Starmer?
Well, I do think you've probably got to pick your moment moment, and if I was in the Labour Party, I would think getting rid of him this time next year is probably the right time to do it. The Labour Party...
That's like he doesn't want to get rid of Rachel Reeves. He wants her to take all the grief for bad budgets.
Yeah, well, but frankly, this is not Rachel Reeves' fault. This is Keir Starmer's fault, because it was Keir Starmer that couldn't get his own backbenchers over the line to make common sense welfare reforms that needed to be made in the summer.
And they were dropping the ocean in terms of what's needed, whether or not. 11:47 is the time. I'm going to take a quick break. Going to talk about BBC versus Trump. $5 billion lawsuit now on the cards. Should Keir Starmer use his big friendly relationship with Donald Trump to talk him out of it? We'll talk about that up next. This is Talk.
Big news coming this December. Our Talk TV app is moving to the Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. From Monday, 1st of December, the Talk TV app will no longer exist, so don't miss out. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
UK on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Morning, welcome back to the show. 11:50 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. This is Talk. Let's talk about the BBC. It's the BBC basically doing the dirty on Donald Trump, not just in that Panorama documentary, but also in a Newsnight report as well over that 2021 January the 6th speech that Donald Trump did, slicing it slightly differently, two separate things that he said very closely to make it look like he was directly inciting physical violence at the Capitol that day. But of course, we've got Donald Trump threatening a multi-billion-dollar lawsuit. He said he wanted an apology by last Friday. It was up to $1 billion. Now he's talking about up to $5 billion. So the question is now should anyone, particularly our Prime Minister, who apparently has such a good relationship with Donald Trump, try and talk him out of it to save the BBC and indeed our money? Let's talk to John Mayer. He's a former BBC producer. Good morning to you.
Hi, Julia. Good morning to you.
Thank you very much for joining us. So, do you think it's reasonable that Donald Trump should be suing the BBC for misrepresenting him?
Look, Julia, let's get reasonable. Do we want the BBC? Do we want the British Broadcasting Corporation, or do we want the Trump Broadcasting Corporation? This is what Donald Trump wants to do. If he gets his way, $5 billion is the entire license fee for 1 year. Where's the BBC going to get that money from? Be sensible. Tell Trump to take a running jump. It's got nothing to do with him.
What do you mean? No, it has got. No, hold on a minute. Wait, he's not trying to take the station over. He's simply saying I mean, you can like Trump or dislike Trump. You can vote for him, not vote for him. But there is nobody that I think... I don't like Adolf Hitler, but I don't think people should distort what he said in a speech. You could just play what he actually said. There were 2 deliberate attempts. They weren't mistakes. They weren't inadvertent errors. 2 deliberate attempts to actually distort and mislead the British viewer, the audience that are forced by law to pay for the fee that funds this. We were misled by the BBC about something that he said. He's got every right to sue, same as anyone else.
The BBC's apologised, Julia, and in fact, the show, as you know, was never shown in America, and Trump won an election 2 days later. No, look, he is trying to bankrupt the BBC. What he's done in America, he's got rid of any opposition. PBS is gone. NPR has gone.
They haven't gone. They haven't gone. He's just not funding them because they're not neutral broadcasters.
They've been chopped off at the knees, Julia. And then he's also taken on the networks, but the only 2 people who've taken him on are New York Times and CNN. You know, Trump is a playground bully. Why don't people realise?
I think he is, and I don't think that he wants a free press. I think he wants people to be to kowtow to him. I completely get that, but then so do the left. We see this all the time. They're exactly the same people who are attacking our station and other stations with a similar viewpoint. They're exactly the same. The left does this all the time, but you think you're the good people, so it's okay.
No,
at the end of the day, the BBC did something wrong. Heads have rolled. They've apologised and heads have rolled, but they still say there isn't a problem. There is a problem because they don't think it's institutional when it is. If he has, I mean, look, he's not suing in a British court. He's suing in a Floridian court, by all accounts. There are some big question marks about whether or not, as you say, there has actually been damage to his reputation that he's had an impact from, but given that he won an election soon afterwards, and it wasn't played in America. So there are question marks about that. But if the BBC does actually do something wrong to someone, they misrepresent someone, doesn't anyone, whether they are abroad or in Britain, have the right to take legal action against the BBC? Or can they just do anything they want?
No, of course they have a right to.
So why doesn't he?
But why does he want $5 billion? You know,
he won't get $5 billion. He talks silly numbers. He won't get $5 billion.
This is Trump's style. This is the art of the deal. You're going over the top, and he accepted $15 million in most cases. Look.
Well, why shouldn't he? So why shouldn't he get $15 million then?
Well, you know, he should get nothing. He's had an apology. That's good enough.
Well, hold on a minute. No, hold on a minute. I work in a building. We've got newspapers and broadcasters. Yeah. If we libelled somebody, if we misrepresented somebody, we would be expected to pay them damages by a court.
Well, he's had an apology, and that's
no. Why is the BBC different? Why just because you don't like someone or agree with them? Why isn't he entitled to damages?
Look, you must not give in to playground bullies. And, you know, if Trump came after Talk TV and started bullying you, I bet you would object to it.
I'm sorry, no. If we misrepresented somebody, I think they'd have a right to have redress. That's why we don't do that, because we try and be honest about people.
Now, Julia, do you want to destroy 104 years of broadcasting history? Do you want to destroy the BBC?
I'm not. No. The BBC's doing that all on its own. It doesn't need my help.
I know, okay, but you want to do? I mean, you remember the last time we spoke? I talked about the hyenas who were after the damaged BBC, and now you've got a bone. You're going to pick at it. But the BBC is one of the great British institutions.
It was. It absolutely was, but it isn't anymore. I don't want the BBC. John, I don't want the BBC to be defunded and not exist, but I would like the BBC to once again become a great British institution that we could all get behind and we're all happy to fund, doing proper public service broadcasting instead of lecturing us and basically giving blatant, liberal left bias. They've brought this on themselves.
I see that Trump is now objecting to the Reith lecture. He doesn't like what the Reith lecturers say. What has it got to do with him? Look.
He's called a monster by the Reith lecturer. This is the annual.
Yeah, but that's fine. He's allowed to have a point of view.
He's entitled to do that. Yes.
Yeah, people are allowed to have points of view. Trump can't determine what everybody says. I'm left of centre, but I actually believe let 100 flowers bloom, and I, by and large, believe the BBC is straight down the line.
No, I know, and that's the problem. Is lots of people on the left think that, and very, very few people on the right think that. So one of us is wrong.
I watch ITN at 10 o'clock instead because the story selection is better. It's more relaxed. The BBC is really a bit too uptight. It's too aunty. You know, they need to relax a bit. But you know, now is the time for the BBC to reset.
I don't think they need to relax. I think they need to get their act together. But there we are.
And use that horrible phrase, learn the lesson.
John, should the Prime Minister use what political capital he has with Donald Trump? They appear to think they're good friends, and actually basically, you know, ask a favour and try again.
No, absolutely not. It's not the Prime Minister's job to do that. It's not the Secretary of State for Culture's job to do that. You know, the BBC's done what the BBC's done. You know, Keir Starmer should not go crawling to Donald Trump.
Okay. What about the legal? There's going to be legal costs, whether they settle, whatever they end up doing. If they settle or they end up making a payout, frankly, I'd love there to be a court case just to see all the emails and what's really been going on.
We'll see all the discovery.
That discovery would be great. But where should that money come from if and when it does get paid?
As you know, it comes from the BBC's libel insurance. So it shouldn't come from the taxpayer. But if you actually believe that Trump should get $5 billion, why don't you support doubling the licence fee, a Trump tax? I
don't think he should get $5 billion. He's clearly not been damaged $5 billion.
Well, he's asked you for that.
Of course he is.
He's asked you for that.
You can ask for $1 trillion. It doesn't mean he's going to get it.
No, but you know, why don't you support doubling the license? Let's have a Trump tax on the license fee. So, all right, folks.
Wait a minute, you just said it's going to come out from their insurance, so we don't have to worry.
Let's double £174.50 to pay for Donald Trump, to pay into the Trump Presidential Fund, which is what he has. Come on, yeah. So just tell Trump.
Do you know what would be much simpler? The BBC could not just sort of completely mislead people, then they could do honest reporting, and then we wouldn't even have to discuss it, would we?
There's no defence. There's no defence of what went on, but you know they've apologised.
There's no defence, exactly, which is why he's got.
We'll learn the lesson, and also leave the BBC alone. Great national institution.
Leave the BBC. I'll leave the BBC alone when they start leaving us alone. Stop lecturing us. John Met, so good to talk to you. I have to leave it there. Former BBC producer. I've got to let Sam Armstrong, whose face has been a picture throughout that conversation, have the final say.
I mean, listening to that, the Trump derangement syndrome there. He says, there's no opposition in the States. There's no criticism of Donald Trump. He's shut everyone down. I've just spent 2.5 weeks in the States. Let me tell you, they're all fuming about him. And by the way, do you know how there is Trump opposition there? The Democrats just did pretty well in the November elections. Yeah. They won in Virginia, some crazy leftist won in New York. There is plenty of opposition there. You don't need the BBC for a neutral and balanced media. It's not that special. They just need to do their job without lying to the public.
Yeah, it's just not that high a bar, is it? It really isn't. Anyway, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. 0344 499 1000. Up next, we're going to talk to the former head of the UK Border Force, Tony Smith, a man who actually knows what he's talking about, to ask him whether or not Shabana Mahmood's reforms are going to make a blind bit of difference. I bet I can guess the answer. This is Talk.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very good afternoon to you. Welcome back to the show. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. This, as you already know, is Talk, the home of common sense. And whether you're listening on DAB+ radio or on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or on your connected device, thank you very much indeed for your company. It's always great to have you join us. If you miss anything from the show, you can go to the Julia Hartley-Brewer show on YouTube page and you can hit subscribe. You never have to miss a thing. Coming up in this hour, we're going to be talking more about this big announcement in a few hours' time from the Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood on basically how to tackle illegal migration. Lots of different measures. I'll go through a few of those in a few moments to make what you think of them. We're going to be talking to the former head of the UK Border Force to find out whether he thinks they're going to make a difference, because so far you're not entirely convinced, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on them. 0344 499 1000. Text the word TALK in your message to 87222. Get in touch on X at Talk TV. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text cost £1, standard network rate message. But we're also going to be talking more about the BBC, not about the battles with Trump as we've just been doing, but also the accusation from Sue Evans, a nurse who blew the whistle at the Tavistock clinic over treatment of supposedly trans children. But she says the BBC has been captured by activists who peddle trans propaganda, and they've been infiltrated by activists biased in its coverage of that saga, but also allowing misinformation to dominate, letting statements go unchallenged. We'll be talking to Sue later in this hour. Also, we're going to be talking about the UK Health Security Agency, because the new government report by them said that fears over climate change could be fueling drug use, particularly by the young. They said that Brits are at risk of being gripped by eco-fear, eco-anger and eco-grief, and that their mental well-being could be damaged by difficult climate emotions. These people are stark, staring insane. Bearing in mind, the UK Health Security Agency is the same public health watchdog, which, it's emerged over the weekend, is withholding data that may link the COVID jab to excess deaths, which we've certainly seen in other parts of the world. They're claiming that releasing the figures would lead to distress or anger of bereaved relatives if a connection were discovered. I kid you not. We might be upset that the figures showed that there is a link between the COVID jab and some excess deaths, and therefore we can't be told about them. That is how the UK health watchdog is behaving towards us. I mean, why don't they just pat us on the head and give us a lollipop at the same time? Patronising gits. Well, we're going to do our best to try and get that overturned. Delighted to say commentator Sam Armstrong is still joining us in the studio. Afternoon to you once again. Goodness me, we do have a lot to talk about. We are dominated today, though, by Shabana Mahmood, the Home Secretary's announcement of a raft of tough new measures we're supposedly hearing to tackle illegal migration. Those who just tuned in and have been blissfully unaware of the news in the last few days, you lucky things, we are looking at things like fast-track deportation, so a limited number of appeals. You can't just keep on appealing for years and years on end. Will they be able to get that past the human rights lawyers and the Labour backbenchers? That's the question. Refugee status only temporary. It's going to be reviewed every 2.5 years. So that's it, you know. Unless you're making a contribution, you're going to have to go. Assumes they're actually going to be able to get those people out, and indeed they've got the people to carry out those reassessments. Judges told not to use Article 8 of the European Court of Human Rights, that's the right to private privacy and a family life, as an excuse to allow migrants to dodge deportations, but also crucially visa bans, Trump style, we're told, visa bans for countries which don't accept their wrong-uns back, whether they're illegal migrants, whether people are overstayed, or whether they are their criminals. 3 African countries should be named so far: Angola, Namibia and the Democratic Republic of Congo. We've got 4,000 of their nationals that we don't want. They won't accept them back. But we are talking about very, very sort of slow steps to actually get to this point. Also talking about confiscating money and valuables from migrants who arrive here to pay for their accommodation, but not if they're family heirlooms. A lot of this is following what the Danish government has been doing. A left-wing government, interesting, in Denmark, they've actually gone much further. They've got a ghetto law. Basically, if there are more than 50% of non-Western migrants living in an area, they can either demolish tower blocks or they can actually physically move people from living in those areas. Whether we actually see them going ahead with any of that is a big question. Whether any of that would actually work, another big question. Sam Armstrong, does any of that, even if it were all enacted, and that's a big if, will any of that actually make a difference to the pull factors of, you know, it's Britain, You can work in the black market, and you might know some people who've got big communities of virtually every country in the world here, and basically they think that we are the land of milk and honey.
Look, I admire the chutzpah. I admire the salesman...
Of the illegal migrants or Shabana Mahmood?
Of a Labour government, and indeed a Home Office, because the civil servants, frankly, never change. It's the same people who were there before the election, who believe that they can pull one over the British public yet again. If you believe that this is going to make the blindest bit of difference, well, I've got a bridge to sell you. Look, these people believe that they could sell ice to the Eskimos, but at this point, everybody has worked out what is going on. Now, look, we've seen the fact that they say they're going to introduce Trump-style visa bans, only they're not Trump-style. They say they're going to seize jewellery, except if they say that they got it off, as I say, off the great Aunt Nellie, in which case it's exempt. They say we're going to send people home, yet they're not getting us out of the human rights framework, which means that people can appeal again and again and again, because Article 6, part of it that they're not even attempting to change, requires that they're able to do so. Until a politician, and frankly at this stage I don't care who, cuts the Gordian knot that is the UK's human rights framework and says, look, no, human rights do not apply, expressly do not apply to people who have broken into our country illegally, and we will send them wherever we choose at whatever stage we wish to, then nothing is going to work. And look, you wouldn't need to do it for very long, as Australia shows. You just need to draw a line in the sand and say anyone coming from this point forward is going to go home.
But also, crucially, I want the people who are already here out. Bye-bye. Thank you very much.
But we can't do that at the minute, Julia, because we're getting overwhelmed. In terms of stopping the boats...
You need to stop, and then you can start working your way through. Right, well, I'd love to hear your thoughts. As I say, 0344 499 1000. Lots of texts and tweets. I will get to those, I promise, as well. But right now, let's talk to a man who knows. We often turn to Tony Smith, former head of the UK Border Force, just to simply go, will any of this actually make a difference? So I'll put that question to you, Tony. Afternoon to you. Will any of this make any difference?
Not really, Julia, I'm afraid.
I did not see that coming. I did not see that coming.
Sorry if I burst any bubbles here. But I mean, you know, in my experience, and I've got a lot of it, in terms of reducing asylum intake, you've got to either stop them coming in the first place, so they can't get within the jurisdiction to claim asylum in the first place, or you've got to remove them quickly when they get here to send that message. And I don't think anything I've seen so far from these new announcements are going to do that. I mean, there are some things that might reduce the pull factor a little bit. If you're saying you can't bring your family here, you'll never get settlement for 20 years. Other aspects, I quite like the idea of sanctions, Julia, on I've always said, look, why are we letting countries, you know, get away with not giving documents to...
You take your people back, end of that. But also, again, though, that should be much stricter. It should be, right, as of Monday, none of your flights are arriving here. None of your nationals get to come to this country. I don't care whether you're the president or not. That's it. We're done. You start taking your people back. That's the sort of act, that's the Trump-style visa ban, isn't it? That's what works.
Yeah, and so we need to remember what the distinction is now between what Labour are saying and what the other parties have been saying. Reform have always been saying, Conservatives saying more recently, is we're not going to admit you into our asylum system at all. If you come from a safe third country like France, there is already provision in the immigration laws to do that. We're doing that now, in fact, with the one-to-one scheme. The Tories want to do it with Rwanda. So we could exclude everybody from the asylum system, for coming on small boat from the asylum system using that. And then the other thing, which you rightly mentioned, is the human rights stuff, which wasn't actually excluded by the Illegal Migration Act, and that scuppered the Tory plan, really. You've really got to do something about the Human Rights Act and demur from the European Convention on Human Rights to prevent that. Because when you're working in the Border Force, this is an illegal entrant, you can detain them, you can remove them, but asylum, modern slavery, or applications for human rights will trump you.
Yeah, every time.
You no longer have that capacity to remove, Julia. You lose that capacity to detain. So we've decimated our detention estate. Hardly anybody gets detained when they come off a small boat. And, whether you get a 30-month visa or, whatever it was, or before 5-year, I don't think that's going to put them off, really, in Canada.
Well, they don't care. And again, the reality is, it doesn't matter what you say. If no one actually ends up leaving, and again, we're going to detain you next week because we're going to remove you, they just disappear into the ether, don't they?
Yes, I'm afraid so. So, I mean, I think there are aspects of this, Julia, that I want to sort of throw it out completely. There are certain aspects which the Danes have shown as reduced asylum intake, but Denmark's a different kettle of fish. They're still in the EU. They're in the border of the Schengen zone. They haven't deported thousands and thousands of people. They've just shifted across to Sweden or Germany because there's a more generous system there than there is in Denmark.
But there is that argument that one of the reasons they come here from France, so it's a perfectly safe country, I spent half my life trying to get to France, is that actually they get much more here, and even if you're living in a pretty cruddy, 2-star hotel somewhere, you've got a better life than living in a tent, in northern France. And that's we just have to be inhospitable. But our lefties here, no, we need to roll out the red carpet. Let's go back to the Human Rights Act though, because Article 8, the right to privacy and a family life, these are the crucial aspects. These are being used. My son doesn't. I've sexually abused people. I've sexually abused kids, but I've got a right to family life with my kids. I'm not even allowed to see without somebody actually, to make sure my kids are safe. That's actually a case of being allowed to stay here. My son doesn't like chicken McNuggets in Albania, right to stay here. I mean, abject nonsense. We're talking about foreign criminals. The case, the other day, foreign criminal convicted, supposed to be leaving. He's managed to, get someone, knock a woman up. Let's be honest, to get pregnant, how useful, and now he's got a right to a family life with the baby that's even unborn. I mean, we're talking madness. But I want to, just for the benefit, I read this out 2 hours ago, but for the benefit of people, because we always hear so much about Article 8, right to family life. 2 paragraphs. 1, everyone has the right to respect for his private and family life, his home and his correspondence. Lovely, great. This appears to be all that the human rights lawyers and the judges have ever read. They've never bothered looking like, because, there's 2 paragraphs, they've only read the 1. The second paragraph says there should be no interference by a public authority with the exercise of this right. Lovely. Except, it goes on to say, except such as is in accordance with the law and is necessary in a democratic society in the interests of national security, public safety or the economic well-being of the country, for the prevention of disorder or crime, for the protection of health or morals, and for the protection of the rights and freedoms of others. That is actually in the article. How on earth are a bunch of human rights lunatics working as lawyers and as judges in our tribunals and our courts, how have they managed to interpret the right of foreign criminals entered the country illegally, committed heinous crimes including rape, to have a right to stay here under Article 8, when that second paragraph states quite clearly that they don't?
Yeah, you're right, Julia. I'm glad you looked that up. There are provisions in the Convention which would enable us to disallow or disapply Article 8. But the difficulty we've got is a lot of these, these rules that we now have are what we call, established by judicial overreach. In other words, the judicial system relies very much on precedent. Yeah. A lot of the precedents come from the European Court in Strasbourg, and those are passed down and given due reference when there was a hearing at an immigration.
So one judge in the European Court, and often these people have never worked as judges in their own countries, haven't they? They're really not the most highly. These are not like the top legal brains of the world. They then put out a really weird ruling, and we'd all go, "That's crazy." That sets a legal precedent, so someone else can say, "Oh well, that legal precedent, therefore I've got a right to stay."
Yeah, so you've got to unpick that. You've got to unpick that by your own national legislation. You need to pass a law in Parliament here, which very clearly sets out what our position is with regard to interpretation of that convention. That's the democratic way of doing things. But we haven't done that yet. I don't know what she's going to do. She said she's going to do something with Article 8 and Article 3, but that will mean a fairly fundamental change in our application of human rights legislation in this country. And I think that's where the Labour Party may struggle, Julia, because there are a number of MPs to the left of their party. Even Shabana Mahmood a few years ago was advocating an amnesty for illegal entrance. I mean, it's going to really put the cat amongst the pigeons in their parliamentary party. And we know from the Tories, when they tried to change things, 2 or 3 years went by before they were able to change anything. So I'm not sure there's going to be any instant impact of any of these policies right now. And they do need a fundamental change in the legislation. And I'm not sure they're going to be able to do that.
No, exactly. Even if they wanted to. And again, we've got question marks about whether they really want to. What do you make about some of the measures? Because we're told all weekend lots of talk about how, Denmark have been pushing, they've been very successful. As you say, they've actually kind of pushed them back to other EU countries. But Denmark is a different situation. For a start, they've gone a lot tougher on issues like ghettos, where they say, more than 50% of people from non-Western countries are in an area they can move people out, or even, quite pointlessly, I would say, demolish the apartment buildings. Like, just move people out, for goodness sake. But also the idea that you can basically take the valuables, confiscate the valuables or money of people, saying, well, we're not paying for your accommodation if you've actually got the money, but not family heirlooms. Of course, anyone with any jewellery or money is going to say, oh, it's a family heirloom. And then, and even then in Denmark, it's barely happened to more than a handful of people. There's a lot of stuff that lots of governments talk about. They talk the talk. It all sounds good and you think it will work, but it's either not enacted or, for instance, like the Danish language test. So if you want to bring your spouse, they have to be over 24 and they have to speak fluent Danish, same as you. But that might work in Denmark because not many people around the world speak Danish. Well, most of the world speak English as a second language now, so that's not going to work for us, is it?
No, so we're not cutting and pasting the entire Danish model into the British model, Julia. They're cherry picking what they want to put down. I think the main two things are you won't get settlement after 5 years, and family reunification. That's going to be tricky for you unless you're making a real contribution. But some of the things you're describing, like the seizure of assets, which I've always advocated we ought to do. I think if we get asylum seekers come over here and then we spend all the amount of money in the Home Office and the justice system and the welfare system, then that should be a charge against them. And it's with kids that go to university, really. They should have to pay that back over a lifetime. Well, I think that's too radical for this government.
Caller suggested that earlier, and I was thinking, but they're never going to do it. There's no point sending them the bill. They're never going to pay it. It's just a load of admin, and we pay for the yet another quango.
So we're not going to do that. And I think in terms of the seizure of assets, I've never known any. I went out on the boats a few times and I've never seen anyone turning up driven with jewellery. So I'm not sure there is a lot of assets to be had.
It's just talk, isn't it? When you mentioned the 5-year to 20-year thing, so this side, after 5 years, you can get permanent settlement here. Again, I think a lot of people find it extraordinary. It's such a short period of time for people. I mean, lots of people come here on like 3 or 4 year courses, do PhD. Oh yeah, no, just stay here. Why don't you? But moving it up to 20 years. Lot of talk. I mean, I'm listening to BBC this morning from a Sins just to rile me up before the show, and Radio 4. It was sort of, you're talking about people not being able to settle here, put down roots, because at any point they could be sent home. Now, it occurred to me that the key word there was home, as in they would be sent home. Like the Ukrainian refugees are here on the basis that that's a particular specific legal position, that when the Ukraine war is over, they go home to Ukraine. Do you think that's an unreasonable requirement?
Well, we get asylum seekers who get status here who go home on holiday. And then we find them at the border and we let them back in again. Even so, I mean, the question is, are they really in serious danger of going back to their own country? Yeah. Once they've established a well-founded fear of persecution in the eyes of the UK courts and the UK law, then that will stick with them. What about Syria? I mean, Assad's gone now. We've got loads of Syrians here. Why have they not gone back? My worry about this, Julie, although it talks tough, it's actually going to just be an annual 30-month renewal, roll in, roll on, unless there's some really serious damage caused by the individual concerned. And that actually we're just going to spend a lot more money on granting cases onward and onward until the 20-year period. And I suspect there'll be legal challenges along the road towards that 20-year period, which will actually cause us to reverse some of those policies anyway. So I haven't got a lot of faith in it, I'm afraid.
I think I've summed up with that sound, haven't I? I mean, the British public are just, we're tearing our hair out now. I mean, it's painful. Just tell us briefly, I know I've made you do this many times before, what should they do if they want to get to grips with this?
Start building detention centres now, not accommodation centres, immigration detention centres, treble the size of the immigration detention estate, change the law so you cannot claim asylum or human rights or modern slavery if you've come from a safe third country like France, and get tough with countries that do not take their people back. Detain and deport. That's what most people want, Julia, but I'm afraid we go a long, long way from that at the moment.
Absolutely. Tony Smith, put him in charge, for the love of God. Former head of the UK Border Force, always great to talk to him. I mean, Sam Armstrong joining me in the studio as soon as that first question, is this actually going to make a difference? We knew perfectly well the answer was going to be not really.
Yeah, but every single Monday they play the same trick, don't they? They send us these press releases that all sound super tough, and then nothing ever changes. And it's really corrosive to our democracy, actually, and it's really dangerous. Because,
it is, actually.
Because if you continue to lie to the public of a country while they see their living conditions get worse, they see public services deteriorate, and people keep coming while you keep telling them that they're not or they're going to stop any time now, people give up on democracy. And when people give up on democracy, when people give up on the things that the very foundations of the state, that's when people turn to extreme parties, to violence, or to worse.
And one of the key things actually about countries where people are happy and people prosper is about there's actually really homogeneity in terms of culture. Doesn't have to be a colour of the skin, but in terms of culture and people being on the same side and agreeing on some basic foundations of the state and the values you have. But also it's trust in that people pay taxes and they know they're going to get something back for it. But when people feel like the taxes are going on stuff they don't want to happen and the government is lying to them, people lose trust. And actually, when people say if one politician lies, it damages every politician, and it does. And if everyone's here plague on all your houses, and the worst thing people say is, I won't bother voting anymore, which is the worst thing. No. If everyone who wasn't going to vote anymore actually voted, you'd be amazed how much you could change. Well, we got this one thing I really love about these protests, and we've spoken to Ola Minahan and many others who've organised protests in Epping, outside the Bella Hotel. Peaceful protests by ordinary working people just wanting an ordinary, safe life in their local town. Crowborough, the latest place in East Sussex. Big protests. I mean, thousands of people out, men, women and children, against 600 legal migrants being put into a nearby army camp that's really close to schools and local community facilities, and just saying, no, we don't want this.
Have you noticed that the lie isn't working anymore about who is on these protests
Racist,
as well?
far right.
They used to pretend that every single person that went out on one of these protests was some kind of extreme bigot, the very fringes of society. It is now metastasised, spread, grown to such a stage where everyone, you can see it, black and white, that these are ordinary people that are just saying, no, not round here.
Well, not round anywhere. I mean, that's the key thing. But again, people say we want people out of the hotels because they cost a fortune, but we don't want them in a camp where they can wander freely. We don't want them in the house at the end of the road either. We just don't want them here at all. If they're going to be here, they need to be in a detention camp, costing very little, and frankly, having a bit of a rotten time. So, I mean, I just don't think it's not even up for discussion anymore. It is quite bizarre, isn't it? Let me get to some of the other messages we've had from people getting in touch. Richard says this won't stop the boats. They won't even be able to get it past their own backbenchers in Parliament. Starmer will have a choice to accept Reform and Tory votes to push it through or pull the policy. He'll pull it because he'll do anything to cling to power. John says no because they won't go far enough. But even if Labour are doing this, what on earth were the Tories doing? No one should ever trust them again. That's your lot. Sam says, this is you're texting me. I'm just here. You just put a post-it note on the fridge. Sam says there's still a massive backlog to deal with and thousands of illegals to get rid of. We don't want any secret amnesties going on just because they've managed to lie low for a long time. Oh, that's exactly what they're going to do. And we know this already. I mean, Alison Pearson on the Telegraph talking last week to a woman working in the asylum system and making it really clear they're just basically just agree to people, even if they've got criminal allegations against them, they're completely dodgy. No, just push them through, because the way they're going to get rid of the long backlog is to just grant everyone leave to stay, and then we're stuck with these people for life. And by the way, they don't go off the payroll. They're then eligible for council houses above you and your family, just in case you were wondering. Sean says nothing will change. It will be challenged in court, and by that time Labour will be voted out. Joe says somehow I doubt they should do anything about immigration. The one in, one out policy turned out to be an absolute farce. Carol says she's attempting to placate and impress in order to take over as PM. Vince says just another useless minister tinkering around the edges, utterly useless. And Elizabeth says I love fairy tales. She should write children's stories, as she loves make-believe stories. I mean, there's just no faith left at all, is there? 12:25 is the time. I'd love to hear from you. And honestly, if you want to call in and say, I think this is a brilliant idea and it's all going to work brilliantly, I'd love to get you on there. I'm not sure any of the calls on the board right now are saying that, but if you are, do give us a call. 03 Shabana, love. I met her the other day. Tiny little thing. Shabana, give us a call. 0344 499 1000. Love to have you on there. This is Talk the Home of Common Sense.
Big news coming this December. Our Talk TV app is moving to the Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. From Monday, 1st of December, the Talk TV app will no longer exist, so don't miss out. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon, welcome back to the show. 12:28 is the time. Well, you know, you've heard me, you've heard Sam Armstrong say, look, I don't think this Shabana Mahmood announcement on tackling illegal migration is really going to work. And of course, you've had, of course, our last guest who really does know what he's talking about, Tony Smith, former head of the UK Border Force. What do you think of it, though? 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. Jason is in Wiltshire, is back in touch. Hello, Jason, what do you want to say?
Good afternoon, Julia. Thanks for taking the call.
Always lovely to hear from you, my love. What do you want to say?
We're on about our Home Secretary. A little bit bored of it now. It's every Home Secretary. Is it standard practice that it's just on the you know, to read off? Yeah, you've got to mention immigration. You're going to tackle immigration. They've all said it. We've gone back as far as Priti Patel, and she was going to slam the boat. She was going to do whatever, and she done absolutely jack. Nothing's good.
I was being worried about where that sentence was going.
No, but nothing's going to get done, and I want to hedge a bet with you.
Yeah.
Right? I reckon we've got more chance of watching you on Strictly Come Dancing doing the cha-cha-cha than what we have of any Home Secretary in this Labour government actually stopping the boats and the immigrants.
Jason, I kid you not, a few years ago, I got approached by some of the Strictly Scouts at an event where I was dancing. They'd actually seen my moves. Nothing came of it. I was absolutely gutted.
And obviously what your sort of opinion are, because I reckon you'd have fell out with most of them on that show within about 10 minutes.
Why? Because why? Well, I've got friends and family who have millions of different... unlike people on the left, I don't have a need for people to agree with my political views to be friends with them. No, I could do the old spray tan.
Spray tan. But yeah, no, I would like to see you on it, and let's say we had your bet. What's gonna happen first? You're going Strictly, or Labour government's gonna sort of stop the boat.
That's accepted. The BBC are never going to let me go on Strictly. They're never going to let me go on Strictly. It would be good fun. Do you know, I tell you what, you know who could win Strictly? My husband. Great mover. Great mover.
Really?
He can follow instruction better than I can. Does what he's told.
Well, yeah, I was going to say I don't think you go well to being told what to do. But
although it depends. No, there's a couple of those dancers I'd be quite happy to tell me what to do, but there we are. We'll leave that on. I'm a happily married woman. Jason, always good to hear from you. Thank you very much. James, let's take us back to some sense. James is in Devon. James, you want to talk about taxes. Small matter of the budget in a week and a half.
Yes, Julia, as a veteran who served in the Gulf War and did peacekeeping in Bosnia and in Rwanda, I've got to get this off my mind, because if I don't, I think I will jolly well explode. At this moment in time, we are going to be paying Mauritius billions and billions of pounds for something that we own called Diego Garcia, which is ours, and where the Mauritius don't have to pay taxes, their nationals, for 6 months. We're paying doctors and drivers. We're paying billions for hotel bills for illegals and for legal migrants that come here in welfare. We're paying energy taxes. You wouldn't believe we have access to oil and gas in our own land. We're paying billions in overseas aid. We're paying NGOs millions and millions of pounds to denigrate our country and our history. We're paying the police and the legal system to have a two-tier legal system over us. We are listening to Caribbean nations trying, at this moment in time, to fleece us for trillions and trillions.
This week, they're having talks with the British government on reparations for slavery. I mean,
which is a joke. And we now going to be paying for other people's children after the two-child benefit cap is basically reduced. And I'm now going to be paying more tax. And do you know what, Julia? I think I'm going to self-emulate before it happens next week.
I couldn't agree with you more. It's just mind-blowing, isn't it? The things, we can't afford this, we can't afford that, but we can, just, here's money for the Chagos Islands we already own. I mean, it is utterly mind-blowing what they do. What do you think's behind it all? What's your theory?
Oh, Julia, I just read out to you something, I'm no professor, but I could do more than Rachel accounts. What I just read out to you here must be touching about £300 billion. We've got shale gas, we've got actual oil that can be pulled out. We've got an energy secretary that puts 78% tax on our energy bills and thinks we're stupid by saying it is the international market. No, it's what the taxes you're putting on from when you buy it. We are not stupid. I have had a goddamn enough of this. I want a general election. I want some sense in there. And I'm sick and tired of paying the expenses of these children who think they are government ministers. They think they're at university. I'm sick and tired of it. I could do a better job.
Oh, I think we can all agree on that. James, I mean, every word, mate, every word. James in Devon, thank you very much indeed. Like, what is the point of working anymore? And he's a man who's done, not I do, sitting here yapping, a proper job, actually, fighting for his country. Thank you for your service, sir. Sam Armstrong, your response to that?
I think James speaks for millions and millions of people in this country that you can feel it when you go around, that the British people are close. They're very close, actually, to giving up in a lot of places.
They really are.
And who can blame them?
No, when people lose faith in democracy, that's really worrying. Look, up next, going to take a quick break. We're going to be talking about the BBC. By the way, we've just had a statement, an update from Samir Shah, the BBC chair, basically saying when it comes to Donald Trump, their position has not changed. There's no basis for a defamation case, and we're determined to fight this. But the BBC, according to my next guest after the break, is, captured by trans activists. Hey, tell us something we don't know. She's going to go through what's been going on. Up next, this is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Not morning, afternoon, 12:36 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense. Sam Armstrong's also with me, and going to be talking next about, the BBC, but not the BBC and Trump, the BBC and the trans activists who have basically infiltrated the BBC, who've captured the BBC, turned it into a trans propaganda organisation. I mean, tell us something we don't know. I think that's something we've all been very aware of for quite some time. I mean, when isn't there a drag queen somewhere on the BBC? When isn't someone constantly representing women, someone who is trans? And the coverage of the Tavistock saga, of course, and of pretty much every single case involving women's rights activists taking on trans activists, trying to take away women's safety and women's rights. we know the way the BBC reports it, do we not? Well, let's talk to the Tavistock whistleblower, the nurse, Susan Evans, who was one of those who exposed what was going on in the Tavistock, where young children were going to the clinic to be basically diagnosed pretty much on a whim within a few hours as being trans, often put on a route of puberty blockers which would put them in a one-way track towards often having their genitals or their breasts removed one day, and into, frankly, a life of, absolute despair for an awful lot of these children, rendered infertile, incapable of any sexual pleasure and the like. A decision that no child should be able to make under the age of 16, I would say 18. But Susan Evans joins us now. A very good afternoon to you, Susan.
Hello, Julia. Thank you for having me.
No, thank you for joining us, because you are a fantastic whistleblower in terms of I think the lives that you have saved from being ruined. You should sleep soundly in your bed every single night, knowing what a good thing you did, helping to expose what happened at the Tavistock. Now, you and I both know that the BBC, Woman's Hour, which is an absolute joke of a show for many years, failure to cover one of the biggest issues when it comes to women's and girls' rights, but the Tavistock in particular, talking about children's rights. The BBC's coverage of this was undoubtedly skewed by the fact that so many at the BBC have just completely signed up to sort of Stonewall mermaids agenda. Tell us, when you say that BBC has been infiltrated by trans activists, what you mean.
Well, I can only speak, directly to my experience. But obviously, when I first spoke up about this, there were very few clinicians who were prepared to, put their head above the parapet and express their concerns because of the environment that was around at the time. But I felt it was very important. But what I noticed was, as soon as I had submitted the papers for the judicial review, which became known as the Kira Bell Judicial Review, although the BBC initially contacted me and did some recording of my case, I don't think that ever went to air. And then, of course, as time went on, the various sort of outlets would contact me. Radio 4, I have to say, are one of the better radio programs. But I had other experiences where whenever I was interviewed or asked for comment, the Stonewall or the Mermaids organisation or the Tavistock would be allowed a final statement. Yeah. And particularly Mermaids and Stonewall made statements that were clinically not true. And they were dangerous, in my opinion, and misleading for parents and children alike. And it really infuriated me.
Well, yeah, indeed, and just treated, again, we know that from the that internal dossier that's brought down the Director General and the Head of News at the BBC, that Michael Prescott internal dossier, basically obtained by the Telegraph, disclosed that there was trans coverage was subject to, the words, effective censorship by specialist LGBT reporters who basically refused to cover, I hate the way you use this phrase, gender critical stories, refuse to cover biological fact from the, from the view of particularly women's activists. But we know, and people like Helen Joyce, a regular on the show, key part of Sex Matters, the campaign for women's rights on this issue, author of a brilliant book, Trans, never once interviewed on the BBC, and kept putting it no interest whatsoever. And it was, an absolutely, groundbreaking book, exposing what was really going on, and just no interest whatsoever. Whereas you think about some of the nonsense that gets covered on BBC. But this is the thing. I was told what's happened at the BBC is that, they go to desks. It's not like lots of different reporters do lots of different things. It's like with the climate coverage or other coverage of other things. It's a specific desk of people, and they cover this particular issue. And then, of course, more and more activists move into this particular desk, and it just becomes everybody feeding on themselves and basically not allowing, they become the gatekeepers and not allowing any story that doesn't agree with their worldview to get through.
Yeah, and that's right. And I have to say there are some really good staff in the BBC who I think found themselves caught up in this, that they tried to allow, for example, there was one particular Radio 2 show, and I asked specifically to have an opportunity to respond to the claims that I knew mermaids were about to make. And although that particular person really tried to help me, ultimately they were overruled. And I think I've heard from other staff who have subsequently left the BBC, and we know about Jenny Murray, of course, on Westminster, that they were just not allowed to give an alternative view. And I think that's the really important thing to say, Julia. It's not an anti-trans view, but in medicine and the area where I work clinically, it's really important that we have an open mind and we try to ascertain what is the best care for these children, not what is ideologically expounded on by these various organisations.
No, and that's the thing, and they were all sort of treated as if they were experts in it. And again, it was fascinating when the CAST review came out, which was the big review into treating of so-called trans children. There's no such thing as a trans child, of course, but the treatment of children at the Tavistock Clinic and elsewhere in Britain. And lots of people who've been clearly sort of say, oh, you're all terrible and transphobic. There was barely anything new to anyone who'd been paying attention in the CAST review, which was a brilliant report, and she put it together superbly, and she had the credentials as a senior paediatrician. But actually, an awful lot of this stuff was already known. But there were claims being made by Stonewall and trans activists like Mermaids that if children who aren't given affirmative care or given puberty blockers are more likely to commit suicide, not true. I mean, absolutely not true. And that puberty blockers are reversible. Actually, virtually any child put on them ends up not. That the damage to children's brain development, their bones, and all the other physical damage of not going through puberty properly, that was completely covered up. That there was no proper long-term research to follow up these dangerous drugs being given to children. There were so many things that were just talked about as if they were fact, and they were just simply not medically proven.
Yeah, and really that's why I sort of put my head above the parapet again. I mean, I'm getting on with my clinical work in the main now. But again, when I heard people at the BBC claiming that this was a right-wing plot, and that the BBC was being undermined, I've always supported the idea that we have an independent press. And I've, for many years enjoyed the BBC, but I experienced it directly. They wouldn't give me an opportunity to even have the conversation. And this is not about necessarily saying I know absolutely everything and you don't, but it was just that I clearly witnessed that my opinion and our opinions within the sort of what's known as the gender critical world, I don't like the term, but just people who are open-minded about this and want to get to some kind of evidence base around it are just silenced.
Yeah, and let's just have a conversation. Well, again, we reported on the Sunday Times that presenters, actually female presenters in particular, complaining at the BBC and reporters complaining over trans reporting. And we saw, didn't we, with Martine Croxall, the BBC newsreader, correcting pregnant people to pregnant women with an eye roll, and being formally disciplined over that. We saw a presenter on Justin Webb on the Radio 4 Today programme, the flagship Radio 4 news programme, being formally disciplined for pointing out trans women, so a biological male. I mean, that's a matter of fact. And one of the issues has been over the conversations about trans is that by using terms like trans women or trans man, actually it's confused a lot of people, and it's much better to talk about it, trans-identified man, biological male would be a more honest way of putting it. But we see this across the board in the media. It's not just a problem at the BBC, is it?
No, I mean, I have to say there are certain papers, I don't know if I'm allowed to name check them, but I think the Times and the Telegraph and even at times the Daily Mail have actually printed articles which allowed people to express their concerns. And I've certainly had a good experience in certain areas. But in other papers, when I read the reporting, and we know that Suzanne Moore left The Guardian because she just felt she wasn't allowed to question anything. And I think that's the terrible thing. And what I'm hoping that out of this, I don't want to see the BBC close.
No, I don't either.
But what I want to emerge from this is an environment where people a lot more feel able to hold on to what they believe is a sort of reality-based view, or even be allowed to question things and say, but what if this?
If you're not doing that in a medical establishment, and if you're not doing that as a journalist, I think you're in the wrong job.
That has always been my deepest concern, that, we don't know about this medication and the full effects of it, but we weren't allowed to even question it.
Absolutely.
You get accused of being a transphobe and a bigot, and that is a terrible thing in medicine and clinical work. It's a travesty.
Absolutely. Well, Suzanne Evans, you've been, and honestly, the number of children you've protected, you should really be given a medal. Tavistock whistleblower Suzanne Evans, thank you very much. I'm former nurse at the Tavistock. Thank you for that. Sam Armstrong, I mean, look, you're a big player of the Free Speech Union, and they've been helping a lot of these cases. And she mentioned the Kira Bell case, a child who was allowed to sort of be given treatment. She said, I wasn't qualified. You should never have allowed me to agree to this stuff. And they're doing it without parents knowing often, or bullying parents by saying, well, would you want a trans kid or do you want a dead kid? I mean, what happened at the Tavistock was outrageous, but the BBC is part of the problem.
Yeah, and they've set up these kind of special little units and hubs to deal with conversation where they think that they, the BBC, need to determine what is and isn't acceptable to say. And you see it on the climate issue in particular, where the BBC have a very specialist team there, allegedly specialist, that determine...
They've just got blue hair and nose rings.
Determine what is and isn't acceptable to express on the climate issue. And the problem you get with that is when you have a fake consensus, that's when things that everyone has worked out are madness just carry on and perpetuate for that long. So never you mind that China, Russia, Brazil, the United States have now abandoned the green madness. We're going to carry it on. We're going to bankrupt ourselves. And in 20 years' time, we're going to look back and think, oh, what? Why did we do that?
Some of us have been speaking up on this. Well, I tell you what's interesting. This is all coming up in our next conversation with Carl Hennigan, Professor of, this is weird, evidence-based medicine. We're going to be talking actually about climate and indeed COVID jabs, and why apparently we're not allowed to know if COVID jabs did or did not cause excess deaths, because we might be upset about it if they did. That is literally what the UK's public health watchdog has publicly said. I kid you not. We'll talk about that with Carl up next. Stay tuned. This is Talk.
Big news coming this December. Our Talk TV app is moving to the Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. From Monday, 1st of December, the Talk TV app will no longer exist, so don't miss out. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very good afternoon to you. 12:51 is the time. Let's talk to my next guest now, Carl Hennigan. He's a Professor of Evidence-Based Medicine at the University of Oxford. A very good afternoon to you. Can you hear me, Carl?
I can hear you.
Oh, God, we got you there loud and clear. Now, I want to talk to you actually about there's two stories. In fact, Sam Armstrong just brought up both of them really to a certain extent. Climate change. According to the UK Health Security Agency, the public health watchdog, apparently fear about climate change could be fueling drug use, according to a government report. Britain's apparently at risk of being gripped by eco-fear, eco-anger and eco-grief, and their mental well-being could be damaged by difficult climate emotions. Is this an actual thing?
Well, I had to look some of this up. In fact, here's one. Solastalgia, Julia. Distress people may feel when the environment changes, possibly due to extreme weather. Well, actually, it poured it down last Friday, and I felt a bit distressed and depressed.
Well, yeah, I mean, as I was saying this morning at the beginning of the show, when it's blue, it's freezing cold out there, but it's blue skies, and suddenly you feel completely different. Doesn't everyone feel miserable when it's grey and rainy?
But here's the important issue here now. The UK Health Security Agency costs us about somewhere upwards of about 600 million. So if Rachel's looking for money to be saved here, I would actually say this was borne by Matt Hancock back just after the COVID pandemic. I think it's fishing around for work. This is ridiculous for it to be. This is important money that should be spent on the NHS and frontline care. And in the background, they're doing reports. We're going to talk about FOI. Somebody should FOI and say, how much does this report cost?
Freedom of information, yeah.
Because I actually believe now we have people in positions of power who are advising the government who are not fit for purpose. Producing reports like this just shows you what they're fishing for work, and they're wasting our time.
Well, and we're paying for it. We've had reports in the past about people getting all very hysterical. I mean, I've interviewed quite a few people that's Just Stop Oil lot and people like that, and I mean they're genuinely properly hysterical. And again, the Greta Thunbergs and the how dare you? They don't seem to know a single fact about any of these issues, and one can have lots of knowledge and have an opinion, and you might be fearful. I mean, someone genuinely thinks, and again, I think if you have lots of knowledge, I'm not quite sure why you'd be fearful of climate change. But this report, I mean, the fact they usually say they've wasted your and my money talking about the mental anguish of victims who've suffered flooding, drought or wildfires. By the way, there's no evidence that any of those three things are impacted by climate change at all. But they said there is a considerable set of evidence suggesting increased risk of depression, anxiety, PTSD, suicide, substance misuse and violent behaviour, as well as reduced well-being and difficult climate emotions. And these impacts can be long-lasting, ranging from months, years and even decades. I mean, this is a public health watchdog. What the hell are they talking about?
Well, I think there's one important issue, I think, is young people of today know no different. We're from an era and an age when we would have just looked at this and laughed. It would have got reported on and they would have called this just on. But in the modern world, there's a sort of catastrophization that's going on. That to garner your attention means everything has to be hugely fearful.
Yeah.
And in doing so, we're marketing an issue. People need to dial back the rhetoric. But I think it's now starting to have its day because people just go, I'm switching off the news. I'm not listening to this. So if you're in the fear factory and the fear marketing, the public are telling you these days are over because it does have a detrimental effect on those who are anxious. But you're dead right to point out this is a real marker for Wes Streeting to say, look, here's £600 million. You could probably run the agency for about 50 and put 550 million back into public.
Absolutely. Well, rather more seriously, I would say, this same body, the UK Health Security Agency, I find this extraordinary. They are on record as saying that they don't want to release data about the COVID jab and whether or not it was linked to excess deaths. Now, you and I have discussed excess deaths and we've discussed the COVID jab and what's happened abroad many, many, many times. But they have been accused of a cover-up after they argued that releasing the data would lead to, and this is mind-blowing, distress or anger of bereaved relatives if a link were to be discovered. So we, the public in Britain, are not allowed to know the data that could show a link between the jab people were, let's face it, bullied and lied to take in many cases, and it's possible link to excess deaths from the jab, not from COVID, because it might make us upset if it's true. That is an extraordinary stance for them to take, isn't it?
I don't think people quite get the sort of issues at hand here. But first, let's just say transparency is the antidote of conspiracy.
Always.
Donald Trump has now found that out with the Epstein files. He knows if he doesn't release it, they'll just carry on and on. So we have a system here now says we're using the Freedom of Information Act, which looks like a cover-up. Importantly, They say withholding the data that may link the COVID jab to excess death, said the Telegraph. Now, that's possible. And if we don't get the data out there, how are going to people interpret what's going on? Yep. Importantly, number one, the data belongs to the public. They're the people who had the vaccine. Therefore, it's important that they get the truth and know the truth.
And pharmaceutical companies have been given the data, haven't they?
Yeah, and look, this is an evidence-based approach. If you release redacted versions, you can aggregate or anonymise the data which they've asked for, and you can provide summary statistics. So, for instance, you go in 0 to 5-year-olds, here's the numbers. In doing so, that gets rid of all the issues about data handling. Yeah. So there's something wrong now at the core of our government agencies and what I call the establishment that is letting the public down. And if people want to understand the mess we're in, this is why.
Yeah. Because this is the thing, is if there's no data linking it, and if the data is really clear there wasn't an increase, there were other things that were happening at the time, and that's why there's no link. Well, show it to us and we'll report. I'm genuinely completely open-minded on this issue. We know that all jabs have some negative effects, and if you give a jab to loads and loads and loads of people, millions of people, you're going to have some people who sadly are going to get ill and are going to die. But again, the circumstances in which people felt forced to have the jab, some for their jobs, and to carry on having a normal life, and the lies that we were told about what it would do and who it would save. But if that has caused excess deaths, we have a right to know, full stop, nothing to discuss.
I'm not open-minded anymore, Julia, because last year we spent 900 million on COVID vaccines.
Yeah.
We have a right to know whether they make a difference or not, and in what populations, and if they're harming.
And why would they not want to give us that information? That's the thing that worries me.
So they want to give it across the board. They won't let you see the procurement, the Tron contracts, how much we've actually paid for it. Yep. They won't let you see the data they're built on. From the first day somebody has a vaccine, we need to know what happens. Yep. In doing so, we now have a core problem. Yep. The public doesn't trust the government and its agencies anymore. And it's right to do so if it's not transparent.
And quite rightly so, indeed. Carl Hennigan, thank you so much. Very much appreciate you joining us, as always. Sam Armstrong, this is a big issue. We talk about, trusting politicians and stuff. But, we don't trust the health agencies anymore, which we don't.
But remember, this mega quango was run until about last month by Jenny Harries. Do you remember her from the pandemic? The one that said, let's release all the patients with COVID into the care home. Yeah. Then she said masks don't work. Then she said masks do work.
And then